Good evening. It is 6 o'clock, and I'm going to call our regularly scheduled board meeting to order. And I would like to welcome in our students from Prairie Elementary School to lead us in the pledge. We'll give them a minute to come on in. The students lead us in the pledge and reminds us why we're all here tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you so much for leading us. Do you mind going around and maybe telling us your name and maybe either your favorite class or your favorite lunch item?
My name is Dylan, and my favorite class is social studies.
Great.
And I'm in 6th grade.
My name is Scarlett Brown, and I'm in Mrs. Porter's 5th grade class, and my favorite lunch food is chocolate milk. I'm Ellie Hagan in Mrs. Pond's 5th grade class, and my favorite subject is writing and math.
I am Tiana Brescia Johnson, and I'm in Miss Parnes' 5th grade class, and my favorite subjects are math and social studies.
I'm Emery Hendricks, and and I'm in Miss Campbell's 5th grade class, and my favorite subject is social studies.
My name is Ananya Raja in Miss Porter's 5th grade class, and my favorite subject is math.
I am Joe Corson in Mrs. Campbell's 5th grade class, and my favorite subject is science. I'm Aiden in Mrs. Campbell's 5th grade class, and my favorite subject is math.
I'm Charlie Colburn in Mrs. Parnes' 5th grade class, and my favorite subjects are math and science.
I'm Kristen Jones, the principal of Prairie. I'd like to say thank you so much for this opportunity. This is our Positive Impact Committee. This committee started last year in our 5th grade future. They're going future, because some of them are future members. We started as a student-driven club last year so that we could spread our love for others throughout the building and our community. So it's our Positive Impact Committee. So thank them for coming. They're great.
Thank you for being here tonight. All right. I look to our board members to adopt the agenda if there are no changes.
So move, Goodburn.
Thank you.
Second, Borgman.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We have 3 minutes from past meetings, items 1.4, 1.5, and 1.6. If there are no changes, I seek a motion to approve these 3 board meeting minutes.
Move approval, Hembry.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Boyd Nerona.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right. Item 2.1 is the superintendent's report. Dr. Hubbard.
Yes, thank you. These have been difficult days in the Shawnee Mission community, and I want to address them here tonight. What many of us saw and heard from the video on an incident that took place at Shawnee Mission East included racist language that was completely unacceptable and something we do not tolerate in Shawnee Mission. While by law, I cannot talk about any of the disciplinary actions we have taken to address this incident, I want to assure you that we are following procedures outlined in our student handbook. I want to be very clear about one thing in particular. Racism has no place in our schools. Our community has been clear that we must be committed to the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is clearly stated in the district's strategic plan and we continue to take action in numerous ways to uphold this commitment from our community and move this work forward. We will continue to listen to our students and to our community. We know we still have work to do. It's difficult to believe this is our last meeting for the year of 2023. As we look ahead to next year, a big initiative we'll be working on as a district is an update to the district's strategic plan. I would like to invite Dr. David Stubblefield, Associate Superintendent of Leadership and Learning, and Dr. Leanne Neal, Chief of Early Childhood Learning and Sustainability, to the podium to provide us details about what is coming up.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Hubbard. Thank you, members of the board, for the opportunity. We are excited to be here because we are kicking off our strategic plan cycle 2 this evening. And we are excited to receive applications from individuals who will be interested in being part of our steering committee for the strategic plan. That will open January 4th and be open from January 4th to the 12th. So we want everybody to be looking for more information about that. Coming to those of you who are connected with the school district via district communications, there's also information about it in the Inside Shawnee mission that is going out to all of our constituents. We will also be having a thought exchange component to gather a greater amount of voices, and that will be coming in January. More information will be coming there as well. And so we are pleased. We know that from cycle 1, the strength really came from the multitude of voices that we were able to have as a part of that planning process. We look forward to following a similar process in cycle 2, and we'll be welcoming as many interested voices and parties that will be able to participate either through steering committee, through lending their feedback, through thought exchange, or a little step later being part of our action teams. More information will be coming about that as well.
Yeah, so I think the biggest part of this and the thing that we're excited most about really is that community involvement, hearing those voices, really allowing our community to set the direction of our district for the next 5 years. So those things are exciting to us. We look forward to that collaboration. We look forward to that communication. And to start things off, you guys are going to get to see the world premiere of the Strategic Plan Cycle 2 video. Let's roll that for them.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Franco, and I'm in the graduating class of 2028.
I'm Olivia, and I'm in the class of 2033.
I'm Lily, and I'm in the class of 2024.
We're in the class of 2035. Hi, I'm Everly, and I'm in the class of 2032.
My name is Kaden. I'm in the class of 2036.
Hi, my name is Dr. Michelle Hubbard, and I am so honored to be the superintendent of Shawnee Mission. And it is so important for every one of our Shawnee Mission students to achieve their personal best. How do we get there? By looking ahead and having a strategic plan that guides our work.
The strategic plan serves as an important map for all our work in Shawnee Mission. It helps us all to know what direction we are headed and what we will do to get there.
Strong schools make our community stronger. And I personally want to do everything I can to keep it that way for the cities we live in and for our students and educators.
Since we adopted the most recent strategic plan, it's been exciting to see a lot of progress. Our students have developed personalized learning plans and are all working on gaining real-world learning experiences to prepare them for college and career.
Part of the reason why this process was so successful previously is because we had so many in our community involved. Educators, students, community members, and parents all brought important perspective, experience, and expertise to the process. That's what will make this process so successful this time.
This was a very rewarding experience for me to be a part of. To contribute to a process like this helped me prepare for my studies at the University of Chicago. It also meant a lot to know as a student how many people in the community cared and dedicated their time to helping us succeed. It meant a lot to have my voice and ideas heard.
The process takes time. It's thorough and takes a look at all aspects of our very large district. But it's so valuable because when we are focused on making our schools better and engaging many perspectives, it gives us clear direction for where we want to go.
This strategic planning process will take place throughout the first few months of 2024, with the Board of Education considering the recommended plan in June. We anticipate hundreds in our community will contribute to this process in a variety of ways, by providing input and by serving on committees and action teams. Please watch for more information beginning in December 2023 for details on how you may support the strategic planning process.
Dr. Neal and Dr. Stilt-Bullfield, thank you for your work to get us to where we are. We're looking forward to getting started in the next few weeks. Since our last meeting, we had a few athletics and activities participants earn state trophies. The Shawnee Mission East Lancer Dancers placed third at the Kansas State High School Activities and Athletics Association's Spirit Game Day State Competition, and the Shawnee Mission Northwest team was announced chair runner-up. At our last meeting, we shared numerous highlights from the fall season and once again congratulate all of our competitors for all the ways they shined during the fall season. We're looking forward to all of the winter sports season has to offer as well. We've kicked off a new month of Read Across to SMSD. This December, we all have a chance to remember our connectedness. Let's take a look.
Hi, my name is Joe Gilhouse, and I've been connected to the Shawnee Mission School District for a lot of years. I started in kindergarten and I went through 12th grade. After college, I was fortunate enough to be hired by the district as a teacher. I've taught in Shawnee Mission. I've been a middle school assistant principal, a high school assistant principal, and a high school principal. Last 10 years, I've been at central office where I served as director for secondary schools, and for the past 3, I've been the deputy superintendent. I'm very grateful for my time spent in Shawnee Mission. The theme for Read Across SMSD this month is Recognize Our Connectedness. Our elementary book this month is Remember, by U.S. poet laureate Joy Harjo. In this poem, the main character takes time to think about all of the ways that she is connected to her family, her world, and the community. It's something I get to think about a lot as I serve the more than 26,000 students in our schools. We all may have different stories, but I think about how fortunate I am to be connected to this community just like every student here with me today. Something that is pretty amazing about Roseland is that its students have been learning in this school since 1873. We've asked a few current students to share their stories about how Roseland connects them to their community.
My name is Bella Mira and I'm a 6th grader at Roseland. Before I got here, my mom, my aunt, uncle, and grandma and great aunt attended Roseland. My family has been a part of the Roseland community for over 47 years.
My name is Stephen Garcia III and I'm a 6th grader. I feel very connected to my school because my dad, 2 uncles, and my aunt all attended Roseland before I started attending in pre-kindergarten.
I'm Maya Duncan, and I am in 5th grade. A lot of my family members went to Roseland Elementary School too, including my 98-year-old great-grandmother, Leona Thornton. We call her Mozzie. I love talking to her about basketball, our favorite sport, and when she comes to visit.
My name is Leona Thornton, and this is such a special place. Roseland looks a lot different than when I went to school, but somehow it is the same school community we all know and love.
My name is Junior Garcia and I am proud to be the very first in my family to attend Roseland Elementary. My first day was in August of this school year.
I would like to thank Mozzie, Isabella, Stephen, Maya, and Junior. It's been fun hearing all of the different ways that you remembered your connections to the Shawnee Mission schools. Whether you've been in Shawnee Mission for decades or you just started out, we are all connected because we are one Shawnee Mission, and I'm glad that's something that we can all remember.
Let's read across SMSD.
Thank you to all the students and community at Roseland Elementary and Dr. Gilhouse. We are also grateful for the NEA Shawnee Mission and their ongoing partnership and the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation for providing Read Across SMSD books across the district. This November, the Shawnee Mission Engineering Signature Program hosted an amazing engineering and computer science opportunity for middle and high school students. 100 students committed to a 2-hour training session, 2 weeks of trial time, and then gathered here at the Center for Academic Achievement for Shawnee Mission's first ever Amazon Web Services Deep Razor 2023. This competition gave students a chance to demonstrate their skills using reinforcement learning, which is a field of artificial intelligence, to create models for self-driving vehicles to race on a track team. A team of students from Shawnee Mission Northwest and Shawnee Mission East high schools took first place. A team featuring students from Shawnee Mission West High School and Trail Ridge Middle School took second place. All 5 high schools and all 5 middle schools had participants in the event. It's such a great One Shawnee Mission example. We'll be highlighting their success in the coming days on recent news section of our website and on various platforms, so be sure to follow along. We congratulate these students on their success and thank instructors Jessica Tickle and Renee Chambers for all they did to provide this exciting competition for our students. Everyone is encouraged to spread the word that pre-K and kindergarten enrollment is beginning soon. Enrollment will open online at 8 a.m. on January 8th, 2024. Families will be able to complete applications online and reserve their spots. Those without technology access are encouraged to contact their area school for kindergarten, and pre-K families will be encouraged to contact the early childhood office. Opportunities will be scheduled in the coming weeks for students and families to connect with school staff and learn more about the school experience. We look forward to welcoming new students to the Shawnee Mission School District. Podcast update episode 9 of the Shawnee Mission Mic'd Up is now available for download. I think it's an important one for our community to hear. Like many districts, we are closely monitoring chronic absenteeism and working to encourage strong school attendance in our schools. It's such an important part of helping students learn and achieve their personal best. In this episode, we take a look at why this is an important issue and hear from Cecilia Leong, Vice President of Programs at Attendance Works. This is an organization that works to advance student success by reducing chronic absences. There's a lot to learn from her, so I encourage everyone to give this one a listen. We'll include a link in the recap that we email to all staff and families to make it easy to download or subscribe. Earlier this evening, we held a reception in honor of 2 school board members who are finishing up their time at Shawnee Mission. Tonight is the last Board of Education meeting for Brad Stratton and Sarah Goodburn, who are concluding their terms and serving their last Board of Education meeting. The district has seen a lot of change that has made a lot of progress during their time on the school board. We thank both of them for their time, their service, and for all the ways they dedicated themselves for helping every student achieve their personal best. I invite everyone to join me in thanking both of these school board members for their service to the Shawnee Mission School District. Thank you, Brad and Sarah. Now I would like to invite Lisa Grumman, principal of Shawnee Mission Northwest High School, to the podium to introduce our first All-Star of the evening.
Good evening. Aubrey Hook and I are excited to introduce our All-Star teacher from Shawnee Mission Northwest, Mr. Todd Boren. He is a shining example of the hard work and dedication of our SMSD teachers. Mr. Boren teaches AP and IB European History. Both are electives in social science, and this year his enrollment filled 6 blocks of his schedule, a reflection of how much his students love his class. He makes great connections with his students, and those relationships are essential as students navigate one of the most challenging courses in the AP curriculum. Mr. Boren has a vast knowledge of his subject, and he is an avid reader. He always has a book in hand and is a true lifelong learner. While his knowledge is at the highest level in his field, he has an exceptional talent for the art of teaching. He creates an environment within his classrooms that allows our students to successfully explore and learn complex and interconnected topics. He makes higher level learning accessible and relatable to his students. Mr. Boren is able to maintain a relaxed and inviting classroom atmosphere as they lean into deep and multifaceted discussions. Todd is deeply invested in our Shawnee Mission Northwest family, and he gives so much to our community. His 18 years of service as our head soccer coach left a legacy of student athletes whose lives he has positively impacted. He is a valued colleague and mentor in his department, as well as across multiple departments. And we are grateful to welcome Aubrey to share some thoughts about Mr. Boren.
I would like to thank Mr. Boren for taking time out of his class to talk to me about my weekend or my break, and for making history class really fun with all his fun jokes and his personality, and to congratulate him on his achievement.
We would like to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Hubbard, and our district leadership team and the SMSD Communications for the opportunity to recognize a truly exemplary educator and all-star, Mr. Todd Boren. We now have the opportunity to watch a video and learn more about how Mr. Boren makes a difference every day in the lives of our students. Todd is a teacher who just has such incredibly deep knowledge of his content area, and kids just love to be in his class.
He's just kind of a guy who just finds a lot of humor in life.
He's a very sarcastic individual in the best way possible. He never fails to make me laugh whenever he tells a joke.
Todd's an all-star because he's just a great guy. He's just a good person. Cares about people, cares about his students. He's a great role model for the rest of us.
He's really caring, and once you get to know him, it's really hard to not want him as a teacher.
It's nice to have awards like this that highlight people that are doing a great job at what they do, making an impact on kids' lives, and he's doing that every day.
So we're very lucky he's a part of the Northwest community. He is an all-star. He has a class that is entirely elective for students to take, and he has such a high enrollment and high demand for that class, and kids just want to be a part of that.
I would not be surprised if many of the students chose to take his classes because of his teaching style. He's serious when he needs to be, but he's lighthearted.
His class is just it's so interesting. I feel like you're not just getting that lesson, you're getting so much more, and it's really enriching.
He's my favorite teacher this year. If you have a specific question, he'll stop class and he'll zoom in on that specific question. So it helps refine your understanding.
I know that no matter what's going on with the day or whatever's going on in my life, that he's one person that I can go to, and that's inspiring to me that I can have that kind of person at my place of work.
Congratulations, Mr. Boren. You definitely deserve it. You worked very hard, and I'm happy to have you as a teacher.
You are an all-star at Northwest, and we are so excited to shine a light on all the amazing things you do for our kids and for our staff here.
When I think of an all-star, your picture would be right there, and I'm blessed to be able to work with you every day.
Congratulations on this award, Mr. Boren. Thanks for being my European history teacher.
Todd, congratulations. Such a well-deserved honor. Thanks for being a great friend and a great coworker.
Congrats on your award, Mr. Boren, and thank you for making my last year a great year.
We're excited to welcome Mr. Boren up to recognize him.
I just want to take a few minutes, if I could, just to thank some people and recognize some people. First of all, thank you to Dr. Grumman, principal at Northwest. Thank you for your kind words and your support for me as a teacher at Shawnee Mission Northwest. And thank you to Aubrey and James for nominating me for this award. It's a very special honor. It's very humbling, and I appreciate the fact that my students think of me in such a way. James and Aubrey are just a couple of examples of the students that I'm blessed to work with every day. And they make my job very enjoyable, and they're the reason why I come to work and try to do the best that I can. I want to recognize also the teachers that I work with in the Social Studies Department at Shawnee Mission Northwest. There were a couple of them up there, Sarah Dent and Matt Wolf. I work with a lot of excellent educators in my department. And when you work with great teachers, when you're surrounded with great teachers, they inspire you and push you to try to be the best educator that you can. And many of them are very much deserving of an award just like this. And then the last group of people that I would like to thank would be my family, my two boys, Egan and Caden. They're awesome young men. They're both in high school now, and so they constantly give me the perspective now of what it's like to be a student in high school. And then lastly, I would like to thank my wife, Debbie. Debbie Boren, she is an English teacher at Shawnee Mission Northwest, and she is an excellent educator in her own right. She's an inspiration to me every day on what it means to be a great teacher, and she's been that inspiration for me for 26 years. So thank you all for this award. It's very special. So.
Congratulations, Coach Boren. And now I would like to invite Melissa Green from Comanche Elementary School to introduce our next All-Star.
Need to have these lovely things on. Good evening. I wasn't even sure of where I should start to share all of the amazingness about Chuck, our custodian. When I met Chuck 8 years ago, he was so warm and caring, and I could tell immediately the pride that he had in his duties of taking care of Comanche as he was giving me a tour. It may be cliche to say that he goes above and beyond his duties and expectations, but that is truly the case with Chuck. He has such a passion and pride for his work to make Comanche run effectively and efficiently, all while building amazing relationships with students and staff. He has a great sense of humor, and he is always so fun to be around. We want to thank Chuck for the dedication. We know how an elementary student can leave the classroom, or did I do something? I'm good? Okay. We know how elementary students can leave a classroom or a lunchroom or even the hallways, and he just jumps right on in to go and cleaning it up and just doesn't ever bat an eye. We want to thank him for being very caring, for going above and beyond every day. Our students and staff appreciate all of the hard work and dedication to making Comanche definitely an amazing place to be, and it wouldn't be the same without Chuck. Thank you, board, for the opportunity, Dr. Hubbard and the leadership team for this opportunity to recognize Chuck's impact on Comanche and the shining star that he really is. Please check out this video to see more about Chuck.
He's not just a guy that just passes by in the hall or that you barely know him. He is really a part of our Comanche family. You know, there's not a distance with him. He just is totally 100% a part of us, and we all know him and love him.
He's more than a custodian because he does more than just clean the school. He does more, he makes kids happy.
You gonna eat your lunch today? Good.
I have known Mr. Gibson for 15 years. So he has been at Comanche for 15 years, and he's been wonderful since the first day he stepped in the door. He never complains. He's always willing to help out.
Mr. Gibson is the Comanche community. His heart is this school. He is in the cafeteria during lunch every day. He's talking to the kids, he's helping the kids, he's reminding them to open their milk and juice, and he knows every single one of them.
He does lots of stuff for us, and he is the kindest custodian I ever met in Comanche Elementary, and I'm really thankful for him. He's very nice, and he always talks to people about how their day is, and he loves kids.
He's one in a million. I've never worked with somebody like him before. You know, walking into the building as a brand new principal 8 years ago, he was already able to help guide me and teach me about the building, but I've learned that he has an extremely hard work ethic. He puts in time above and beyond just the normal hours. If, for example, volunteering on a weekend to come up with our food pantry, or he was up here this weekend to help fix our Gaga pit. So just making sure that Comanche can run the best that it can be is just an amazing attribute to have.
Thank you. I'm a man of few words, so unless I'm around the kids, I want to thank everybody so much, especially the Comanche family. We are a very close family. Just today I had a couple senior kids come into school, and they wanted to say hi to me. They know Mr. Gibson. This price chopper right up the street, actually some of the workers there are like 20-some. Well, hi, Mr. Gibson, how are you today? And it makes me really feel good that knowing that I've helped a little bit with them moving on into life. And it's just wonderful working at my school. I really enjoy it. Thank you.
Congratulations, Mr. Gibson. And that concludes my superintendent report.
Congratulations to our all-star
superstars, and thank you for that report, Dr. Hubbard. This brings us to item 2.2 on our agenda, board reports, and I'm going to look to Ms. Boyd Nerona. Any update? Okay. And
There's no Education Foundation update.
okay. All right. I believe we're kind of in a lull in meetings. Let me look down the dais and see if anyone has a report from their committees if you've met since we
I'm pleased to report
convened.
that there's no report.
There's no report.
From policy review, I would say there's second reads. You'll see on 7.06 through 7.09 are second reads tonight for policies.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Item 2.3, the board financial report. Dr. Hubbard?
Yeah, so attached you'll see both the board financial report as well as the ESSA report. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Item 2.4, the annual comprehensive financial reports for the fiscal year ending June 2023.
So we have our auditor here with BT and Company, and I'm going to just turn it over to Russ Knapp first.
Thank you, Dr. Hubbard. I'm pleased to present the annual comprehensive financial report to the board for the year ending June 30th, 2023. State statute requires school districts to conduct an annual independent audit, which also includes the audit of our federal programs. So here tonight is Karen Lynn, who's with BT and Company. She is the auditing director, and she'll give you a summary of our financial report.
Good evening. I appreciate a few moments of your agenda tonight just to present the results of the audit. What I'd like to do is to go through the report to the Board of Education very briefly and to highlight those things that are important to you to hear from me, your auditor, about the results of the audit. So the responsibilities that we have after we are hired to perform the audit is to perform that audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, and also to perform the audit in accordance with government auditing standards and OMB's compliance supplement and the Single Audit Act and the uniform guidance. Those standards, those last ones that I mentioned, are because of the federal dollars that you expend within the district, and those standards require that we perform internal control testing and compliance testing on selected federal programs. The work that we do, of course, we test expenditures and the financial reporting and the footnote disclosures that are in the financial report. And in addition to that, we also look at accounting policies to make sure that they are appropriate and they are consistently applied. We also look at, and actually, if you do have the financial statements in front of you, I want to just point very quickly to the opinion, which is at the front of the financials. And in that opinion, there are some bulleted points which highlight some things that we do as a part of the audit process. And I think it's important for you as a board to be aware of those things that we do. It is, it's just after it's page 2 of the report, but it's several pages in. But I can highlight for you if you can't find it in that document. We exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism, identify and assess the risks of material misstatement to the financial statements, whether due to fraud or error, and we design our audit procedures in order to respond to those risks. We obtain an understanding of internal control relevant to the audit in order to design our audit procedures. We also evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policies used and the reasonableness of accounting estimates made by management, as well as evaluate the overall presentation of the financial statements. And we conclude whether there are any issues or situations within the district that would prevent the district from continuing on an ongoing basis for what we generally would say would be a year. So any of those areas that I mentioned, estimates, accounting policies, disclosures, and overall financial statement presentation. If there's anything in any of those areas that we see that's an issue or that we would want to bring to your attention as a board because of any issues that we identified, we would be bringing those to your attention and let you know about those. There were no issues or anything that we need to bring to your attention, because anything in those areas was all appropriately handled, and everything was in accordance with what we expected to see. We were able to issue an unmodified opinion, which does state that, in our opinion, the financial statements are free of material misstatement, which is the highest form of opinion that can be given to a set of financial statements. In regard to the federal expenditures and the testing that we performed on those expenditures, we did not have any internal control findings or any compliance findings that we identified as a result of that testing. So again, good conclusions related to that test work, and nothing that we needed to report in the document related to that test work. So all good conclusions from all of those matters. There were some what we consider to be significant estimates in the financial statements that we do review as a part of the process. Those are all related to the net pension liability, the other post-employment benefit liabilities, the self-insurance reserves, and investments. And then the new item this year is the subscription assets and liabilities that for the first time this year are recorded in the financial statements, because we have a new GASB statement that requires the recording of those in the financials, which has never been recorded before. So that's a new item, and it is also considered to be a significant estimate. But we did review all of those estimates and determined that they are reasonably recorded, and the amounts are reasonably estimated. The last item that I want to bring to your attention is the representation letter. There is a representation letter that management does sign and provide back to us that has a lot of significant matters that are discussed during the audit, that are represented to us during the audit. Those items in that letter are important pieces of the financial statement, and I think are important for all of you as the board to understand as you read through the financial statements and then to understand those items. So we do encourage you to read that. It is in the report to the board that I believe has been provided. Is that correct? It is as an attachment to that report. So we do encourage you to read through that letter to help you, as I said, to help you as you read through the financials, to have that much more information to help digest. There is a lot of information in the financials, and that information can help digest all of that financial information. So with that, I would open for any questions. It's a quick report, but all good results from the audit.
Well, thank you very much for your update here this evening. And given the breadth of the audit, I find it, and the external review, I find it affirming that you found reasonable estimates, reasonable record, and no issues and no findings. So I appreciate that. Appreciate the work of our district to keep us in good standing. Do we have any questions?
I have, it's probably a Russ question. We have multiple audits we do, is that right? Can you help situate for me this audit versus others? Because am I right, we have one from the state. Can you just clarify for me where this is relative to the other audits that we do?
Yeah, this is our annual financial report. So this is the one that would go out and be placed on EMA for bond transactions, et cetera. Then we have KSDE does an annual headcount audit that determines our general state aid. And they just concluded that, and we're waiting on those findings within the next 30 days.
I would also add, KSD also does a food service audit and a special education audit.
Yep.
Thank you.
So on page 9, I couldn't help but not lift this up. And I'll just read the sentence. It says, investment earnings increased by 2,550% due to interest rates increasing significantly from historic lows. Now I understand it's because interest rates were at 0 and suddenly we're earning interest. But I have to say, at our next Kansas Pension Board, we're going to have Russ be our guest speaker to figure out how the pension system can also get 2,550% return. Duly noted. Thanks for your work on finding extra ways.
All right. Thank you very much. Did you have?
I would just like to add a special thanks to Russell Knapp and his team that do a really great job. I always feel very confident looking at our financial reports, so thank you, Russ, and to your team. And thank you, Karen.
Thank you. And I always do like to mention that good results like this are not just from the period of time we're here doing the audit. It is from a year-long good system of financial reporting. And so I think it's important to, as you just recognized, Mr. Knapp and his team for the good work that they do to provide an underlying accounting structure that allows for this type of results.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Moving on to our discussion items for on the agenda, 3.1, the Jewel Work Group Update.
So as you will recall, over the last several years, we have been having discussions around a Jewel lawsuit that we entered, and then last spring, I believe, we had a settlement in regards to that lawsuit, which equated to several hundreds of thousands of dollars for us. And so we put together a work group to talk about how we can use those dollars to support our schools and, most importantly, our students that are, quite frankly, vaping in our schools. So I want to turn it over to the work group, specifically Dr. Ziegler right now and Dr. Stubblefield. I'm not sure which one I'm taking the lead, but they ran this work group, and I'll let them talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I'll get us started. First of all, thank you, Dr. Hubbard. Thank you, Madam Board President. It was really exciting. I think I speak for Dr. Z and Nurse Bundy when I say that we had an amazing work group, very smart, talented individuals that were funny at times, that challenged us at times, and we really, I think, well, it was a lot of fun spending money from a vaping manufacturer that targets students with their products. So that was fun. I'm going to get started. So again, with our mission and vision statement and with our work from the strategic plan, key topics from that mission and vision statement are an inclusive culture, engaged community, and robust opportunities that challenge learners to achieve their full potential. Also, when you talk about what our students will learn on the next slide, we are challenging our students to achieve academic success through a challenging personalized learning plan, developing that and utilizing that personal resilience and developing those interpersonal skills. I would say that those things are not possible when you have a student that is sitting in a classroom addicted to nicotine based on using vape products. So that kind of speaks to the work that we were challenged with and the conversations that took place. So what I'm going to do is remind our community of the board resolution that was adopted on October 14th, 2019. I'm sure some of you who are on the board now remember that. This resolution authorized the pursuit of litigation against manufacturers, distributors, and retailers of Juul, e-cigarettes, and vaping devices. This resolution really outlined our why as a district to pursue this litigation, and it's hard to see, so I'm going to read a couple of those resolutions where it says, whereas the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Office of the Surgeon General has categorically declared the use of vaping devices unsafe for kids, teens, and young adults. Whereas the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and Office of the Surgeon General has declared vaping an epidemic among our youth. And whereas USD 512 parents and students have expressed extreme difficulties finding appropriate resources for the treatment of youth with nicotine addiction and availability of cessation programs to help youth. That's why we're here. We are here because we know that those manufacturers of those devices, specifically Juul, targeted our youth. So 2019, that board resolution to join the class action lawsuit against Juul was accepted. In March of 2023, we accepted the settlement offer of those dollars, and in May of 2023, we put together the Juul work group for Shawnee Mission Schools. All right, next slide, please. All right, so we commonly use the term Juul in this work because of the lawsuit. But the first picture lays out vapes from the most common known as puff bars all the way through an array of different delivery devices. Juul actually is now the least commonly found device with adolescents. Vaping devices designed as cartoons and toys like the one pictured here have targeted our youth. Next slide. So here's a recent New York Times article discussing the dangers of these puff bars. The brand known as Elf bars contain as much nicotine as 590 cigarettes, with the color scheme often corresponding with their flavors. These companies continue to target teens with their playful appearances and flavors. All right, so this is what kind of vaping looks like in our schools when we talk about students who are avoiding going to the bathroom because they know that's where vaping is happening. We have students who have expressed that to us. Teenagers actually crying when vaping devices are found at school and begging their administrators to allow them one more hit before their parents come to confiscate their device. High school students who set up an LLC and sold vape products out of their school lockers, and kids using social media to connect with each other during the school day to meet up to vape or purchase vape items. So when you look at, during our first couple of meetings and conversations, some clear categories were developed. They were wellness education, prevention, treatment and cessation, and identifying outside treatment resources. Before we get into further details in each one of those categories, I'm going to invite our two students who were on our work group to share their experiences as high school students, not only on the work group, but also what they're seeing in their schools as it relates to vaping. So our students, we actually had 5 students that were on the work group. So we're inviting our two students, John Kelly from Shawnee Mission South and Reese Irwin from Shawnee Mission Northwest. I think you guys might be familiar with Reese. She's made an appearance here in the boardroom before. So I'm going to turn it over to them. It's on the top there.
Sorry. Hi, my name is John Kelly. I'm a senior at Shawnee Mission South High School. I would first like to thank Dr. Dane, Dr. Stubblefield, Dr. Ziegler, Mrs. Bundy, and everyone else for involving me in the Juul lawsuit funds work group. Vaping has been an issue in the Shawnee Mission School District for years. I have experienced firsthand in my time at Shawnee Mission South the problem of vaping in high school. Due to this issue, every student is effective. For example, there are bathrooms that I avoid because I don't want to be exposed to or grouped with the individuals who frequent those bathrooms. Early in the school year, you figure out which bathrooms are viable to use and which to stay away from. While administrators sometimes bust these bathrooms, I have not seen a lasting effect on the students or the situation. What's worse is that in some instances, administrators lock bathrooms to prevent people from vaping. This also prevents people from using the bathroom at all. This means that students have to spend more time during the passing period or during class time finding a bathroom that is 1, unlocked, or 2, not filled with people vaping. Every day, I have to choose to walk to a bathroom that is farther away, meaning I miss more class time or I'm late to a class, which is frustrating and can negatively affect my learning. I was invited to participate in the Juul work group where we developed a proposal for using the Juul lawsuit funding. In the work group, I assisted Dr. Stubblefield, Dr. Ziegler, and Mrs. Bundy with brainstorming, researching, and revising of the proposal for maximum effectiveness. This proposal will help mitigate vaping for the current and future student classes. Initial ideas by the work group staff included signage and flyers to encourage wellness and discourage vaping. As a student and a community member, I saw how this would be not effective. Take, for example, speed limit signs. Everybody sees them, but how often do we knowingly disobey them? These laws can result in fines or worse, but we still tend to disregard them. This logic works just the same for high school students and vaping. Random posters and flyers around the schools wouldn't have a significant effect or an effect, would not have a significant effect or an effect at all on the majority of individuals who vape. Through the work group, we developed a plan that would help deter students from starting vaping, learning about the dangers of vaping, and aid in addiction management. These goals are accomplished through a curriculum created by Stanford University and a new position for each high school that helps students refuse or stop vaping. The curriculum will be taught in upper grades of elementary, middle, and high school students. The in-building TTS individual will aid in wellness, addiction management, and vaping education for students in each building. I feel that this proposal will help students to refuse vaping and to help individuals to stop vaping. A very important issue that I personally thought about was education for vaping prevention in elementary schools, and education on the dangers of nicotine and nicotine devices to upgrade elementary schools will be positive in vaping prevention. This is included in the Stanford curriculum. This proposal will help students to refuse vaping, stop vaping, and encourage increased wellness in our schools. Thank you for your time.
There we go. Okay, so my name is Reese Irwin, and I'm currently a junior at Shawnee Mission Northwest. As was stated previously, you might be having deja vu because a couple of months before the Juul task force was put together, I did come in for public comment to talk about rumors of allocations and money that was going to go towards preventing drug usage within the schools. And I wanted to make sure that the student voice was heard in it so that the allocations were used in an appropriate way that I believe would be reflected within the schools. Not only do I see it just other people using vapes or other sorts of drugs within the school, I myself was on a path of similar regards. I am now a little less than 5 months sober off of all sorts of drugs, and it is very important to me to help other people along that journey, which is part of the reason I'm so passionate about being here. Within the program, I think that there is a really, really well put together program that allows for kids not only to have that preventative measure of it, but to also work through that traveling journey of getting that help with outside of school while still being supported within their school system. I think that the high school section of this, along with the early onset middle school, where it is less preventative and more education, along with helping those who are on the track finding those sorts of resources, is probably the most standout part of it for me. I believe that this the plan that we've put together is well formed in that you are appropriate for every age group, along with helping those families who may not be able to support their children by themselves. I believe that along with that, putting together outside treatment resources is a large part of what some of the allocations should go to, because help within the school district only goes so far when kids can just go home. I think that there's also a large part that was presented on not just preventing it within the schools, but also realizing that punishment is not necessarily the best course of action, because oftentimes when we were looking at it, we found that kids who had the option to go through some sort of reformation or go off of it ended up giving up that opportunity to get better and went into their addiction cycle again. I think that this plan overall has been really well put together, and I hope to see a good positive outcome from it, along with seeing how it changes the usage of drugs within our school. Thank you.
Yeah, so as you can see, we had some outstanding input from our students and their student voice. You'll see throughout the plan, again, their recommendations and some of the things that they had to offer in terms of just kind of their lived experience inside of our high schools was just really valuable to the work group. So thank you for your input and thank you for helping out. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Paula Bundy and Mike Kruger, who are going to give their perspectives from the work group.
So I was very excited to be a part of this group, working very closely with our nurses and our students in schools and seeing what vaping looks like. So just a few statistics that came from a national survey from 2022. You see that vaping is a huge issue, and we see that in our schools as well. When you look at 2.5 million students nationwide vaping, the tobacco companies were figuring out how they could keep their base. And so that's how they started targeting it. And we talk about, the whole class action lawsuit with Juul was to eliminate flavors. And Mike, who's our vape expert from Johnson County Department of Health and Environment, is going to share some more information. But really all that did was take out the flavors from the non-disposable. So with the disposable items, they can have flavors. And the flavors we see are quite fun. Watermelon and blueberry pancakes and birthday cake. So that's very popular. And as you can see, 84.9% of students who vape use flavored products. And most of them use the disposable products because they're very inexpensive and easy to get. Kids know which vape shops they can get them from. In this national survey, 27.6 students said they vape daily, and quite a few more said most days out of the month. But it really shows that our nation's youth continue to be enticed and hooked by this expanding variety of e-cigarette brands delivering flavored nicotine. And that's what vapes are. They are a nicotine delivery device system. So I'm going to turn this over to Mike to talk about, and she brought some show and tell.
And I have a lot of show and tell, but I brought some of my not-so-favorites. But I think what is important for you all to know also is that using vape products and the amount of nicotine that are in them is an addiction like we just have not seen ever before. And I say that's for 4 reasons. One is because it's available. I can ask the students, how hard is it to get vape? Not hard. So they can get it anywhere. You think that it's because they're under 18 that it's not legal for them, or 21 I mean, but they can get it online still. They get it from friends. They get it from family members. It's just not hard to get. And in fact, when it's confiscated in schools like Shawnee Mission, students half the time say, fine, I've got 4 more in my car. So the availability is out there. It's also so easy to use. It's an on-demand system. Not like combustible cigarettes. You can suck on a vape all day long. And one of the things I brought that kind of illustrates with the old Juul, this is a necklace that women, guys can wear too. So it's in your shirt in school all day long. All you have to do is literally pick it up and suck on it. And so students are able to find all of this on the internet, all kinds of devices, all kinds of ways to make their vape more covert and not get caught, for number 1 reason. It's also so appealing, and some of these devices will show you why it's so appealing. I was laughing when you were saying about putting up posters, because in public health, that's what we love to do, right? We love to call you all and say, can we drop 75 posters off? So I appreciated so much being with a group of people who were diverse and brought lots of different things, especially the students, to the plate around what vaping is and what it's like for them. So these devices, there's no doubt exactly what the tobacco industry was doing when they created these. We were patting ourselves on the back in public health, saying, look at what a good job we've done. Our smoking rate in Johnson County is down for combustible cigarettes to like 10.9%. We're doing great. And then vaping hit us. And it hit us hard because the tobacco industry looked around and said, who's our future consumer? We don't have any. People are not smoking as much. So they got very creative. I don't know if any of you have watched the Netflix special on Juul, but they tried to present that they came up with this product to help people with their addiction to combustible tobacco, and that's just not true. Because the statistics show us that people who attempt to use electronic devices to quit smoking end up using both products because they're very different in their use. And people will tell you, I like smoking because I do this. I like the process, but I like vaping because it tastes good, it's easy. I can go many places and vape where people don't know, where I can't do that with combustible cigarettes. It's also, so they made it so appealing. This is one of the devices. What does this look like? I mean, it looks like a slushie. These are, if I was a kid, I would love this. It looks like an iPhone-ish thing, right? It's sleek, they make it very tactile, attractive. You can buy covers for your vapes. You can decorate them and do all those things. So they know their audience, and they went to it hard. And then these are the new ones that everybody's been talking about, like this, an Elf bar. And you can see with the colors that they use, the packaging that they do. This particular one is 12,000 puffs. And I also think it's important for you to know that if this is accurate, we say that traditional cigarettes, there's 20 in a pack, and there's 10 puffs of cigarettes, so there's 200 puffs per pack. So these devices that are coming out of China now, the largest one that I've seen, has 20,000 puffs. So if you just kind of do the math, and if that's close enough, that's 100 packs of cigarettes that your kid, any kid, can be carrying right in their pocket to be able to use all day and not even all week long. Sadly enough, that's not enough puffs for some people. It's also very affordable because as the market opened up, of course, it drove the prices down. You can buy Elf bars for between 12 and 20 bucks, and they can last depending on how much you use. They're between 6,000 and 20,000 puffs, so you can maybe have it for a week or so, but it's very affordable. And kids can access it and buy it anywhere, so it's not an issue. It used to be that it was like maybe $50 to start out with the Juul device and with the pods. And then the only thing I can say, and you can see in that slide that was shown about the devices, how they have changed, there was only one of those, and that was a collection, unfortunately, from one of our Shawnee Mission schools. All of these came from Shawnee Mission schools because Paul is my source. So these are confiscated devices and juice and products that we get. And unfortunately, it's not just what's being used in some of these is not just juice. So there's other drugs that can be used in most products, and kids know how to modify them to make them to be used with other products like marijuana.
And so speaking of me being her source, we started back in 2019 as a pilot project, Shawnee Mission School District with the Johnson County Department of Health and Environment, to collect vape devices, to appropriately dispose of them, to recycle what could be recycled, and to dispose of the lithium-ion batteries that are in them, the chemicals that are in them. And so that is something that we continue to do and will continue to do as time goes on. And it's an important part for the environment as well. So, and I think we've got one more slide. And we know that addiction is real, that teens have been targeted, and we know that there are physical and cognitive changes because their brains are not fully developed. And this is an ongoing issue. And we have had parents who've asked, can you help my kids get help with this? So this is where we're going.
If we can go ahead and advance. I think John and Reese did a great job of outlining our work group process, and you've heard from Mike and Paula a little bit more about why it is so vitally important and where we are at since 2019. So I won't go into great detail because, again, I think John and Reese did a great job of kind of summarizing what we brought forward this evening in our proposal. But we set off the work group with identifying the objectives that you see on the screen and that are in the report that was provided in advance of the meeting this evening. So we wanted to make sure that anything we proposed was going to be based on research, evidence-based approaches to supporting student wellness, anti-vaping education, but also cessation in our schools. And we also wanted to make sure we were developing a proposal of action that applied the settlement funds directly to support student wellness. So you'll have a list of the work group members. We did have great participation and support from physicians at KU Med. We had Mike and her expertise in terms of vape and cessation alongside with us. And since then, we've managed to connect with some great physicians at Children's Mercy in pediatrics and as a hospitalist that are engaged in right now research several years in with funding through NIH, the National Institutes of Health. So there will be more to come as we launch into this, this project. Overall, we anticipate, and again, we're still waiting on final numbers after attorney's fees and all of that good, but we are anticipating to have a plan based on about $730,000 that we're supposed to receive the first distribution sometime in this month, and then we will have distributions 3 more after this over a period of 4 years. So that kind of gives you the overview of where we're headed with the plan. If we can go to the next slide. Just a quick, a little bit deeper dive into each of the pillars that John talked about that are a component of this. The first is the wellness education, and that is the broad audience, kind of the general audience is how we classified it. We would estimate roughly $10,000 to cover supplies and communication and professional development curriculum materials over the period of time, the 4 years. But specifically what this was intended to do is to work with our curriculum teams to go in and look at our health curriculum, pre-K through 12, and really start to look at that 5th through 12th grade health curriculum where we are talking about wellness and decisions, the impacts of human decisions on health, and layer in some resources or ask our curriculum cadres to consider the resources that we found available through Stanford University in particular. That would come alongside as a good educational resource across multiple school levels. Throughout the plan, you'll see family engagement is something that was important to us as well, because we know that what we hear from families is the challenge of finding resources to support their children if they are vaping and if they are in an addiction. So those were important pieces. We can go to the next slide. The second was the pillar was for prevention, and we're going to get a little bit more specific to the audience here. We've estimated a little bit more money each year to go towards supplies, communication, but also to support student clubs where kids have a place to go. They can connect in with others and making sure that they have resources to support the work. One of the things that we were able to hear from is our Shawnee Mission North is somewhat of a leader in this space because they are the first high school in Shawnee Mission to start a resist club for students. And we would propose that we would like to share that out and make sure that we have the opportunity to develop those resist clubs and spaces for students where they are supported in maintaining good choices, or if they are looking for support from peers as they start down the path of maybe stopping the vaping, that is part of that prevention component. The other piece is looking again, as Reese talked about, and going to lower levels, elementary. We know in our middle schools and high schools, our students have benefited from Sources of Strength, which is a program that we have launched in partnership with Johnson County Mental Health, and they provided the funding to help train our faculty groups to help the student leaders that then go in and talk about wellness aspects with their peers. There is an elementary aspect to that program, and so we would propose using the funds to give our elementary schools an opportunity to launch Sources of Strength. So again, we have that component of students helping in modeling good choices and how to be well. Sources of Strength is a really interesting program that actually started in the suicide prevention space, but the mission of Sources of Strength is to prevent adverse outcomes for our youth by increasing well-being, help seeking, resiliency, healthy coping, and belonging. So we've seen great things come from that in our middle schools and high schools, and we'd like to use these funds to take that into our elementary schools as well. If we go to the next slide, we're going to talk about treatment and cessation, and this is where the bulk of the funds are proposed. To coordinate efforts, we're going to talk about 2 different types of individuals in this space. Number one, the work group determined that it would be helpful to have a district wellness cessation specialist. So this would be someone that would have a health education background, maybe a nursing background, that would be in the space of supporting our schools, specifically identifying tobacco treatment specialists in each of our middle and high schools. I'll talk about that on the next slide in just a second. But this person would be a liaison to help provide our building administration, students and family support when a student might be identified as connected to vaping. Right, so the district wellness cessation specialist would be helping coordinate programming. We'd like to see alternatives to suspension. We've already started that work and that mindset in our high schools and middle schools. So utilizing Stanford resources, again, to start to develop a layered program that would be in place for our schools to use with students as alternatives to suspension, and again, start that path towards treatment and cessation and just having access to additional resources. We can go ahead and go to the next piece. So this specialist would also be a liaison to positions that we would find from within. We would propose to train 16 educators. They could be health educators, counselors, social workers. These are really trusted adults at the school level in middle schools and high schools that would go through a tobacco treatment specialist training through KU Medical Center. That training already exists and people are going through that, but it does have a cost. So part of the funds would go to support the training, but also support the additional compensation for individuals at the school level that could connect with kids, and again, provide support at the building level in coordination with that district specialist. So we want to make sure we have support for the schools in doing the work, but also support within the schools for the needs of the students. There would be some additional professional development going through that tobacco treatment specialist training that would be part of this. And again, continuing to work with our buildings on the programs that could come alongside the alternatives to suspension and those educational supports. You can go to the next slide. The last piece is the space that we have not allocated any funding to because, quite frankly, it's difficult to find treatment resources in our community, and our parents have shared that with us. There aren't a lot of protocols in what we found in the medical community for treating teenagers with nicotine addiction. What we did find is in Children's Mercy, in particular, physicians who are treating nicotine addiction once a child is identified with it after being admitted for something else into the hospital, and that's really where their work and their grant and research project that I mentioned previously has come from. So we do have opportunities to continue the conversation and partner for additional grants and be a support to our Children's Mercy as a partner in this work. But we'll continue to keep the door open, and it really is kind of, I think, a passion piece for this group to find those treatment resources that parents can connect students with if they are needing that support for treatment. So that is the quick, I guess, as quick as we can make it, overview for what the work group talked about, what we kind of struggled with in putting forth a proposal for how we best utilize the funds that are coming from this lawsuit. We stand for any questions. I am grateful for everyone that participated, and our students, John, Reese, and then Mike, your expertise, and Paula for being a part of the work. As Dr. Stubblefield said, we had an amazing group that connected well and really had big visions that we could exercise and bring forward. So we'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to? Okay, all right. Thank you all for putting the extra time and energy into maximizing the use of these resources for a really critical issue. I'm just going to kick off one question with John and Reese, because we love it when students are here and put the time in to participate. So what are you most looking to see put in place with these resources? Like, what's the next thing you're really looking to see happen with these resources?
I think, excuse me, I think kind of like Dr. Ziegler said, that individual who can go into the high school and the middle school and can counsel with students who are struggling with an issue of vaping, I think that's a really big part of this work group and a really important piece of it, as there's students who are struggling and they don't know what to do, or they don't know who to talk to, and that type of deal. And so I think that's a really important piece of it.
Thank you.
For me, what I'm most looking forward to coming out of this is going into that further research of outside of school treatment facilities, because oftentimes one of the leading impacts of becoming addicted or dependent on vaping, nicotine, or other substances is not only a lack of support within the schools, but also a lack of support within the family home, and not necessarily off of negligence of parents, but because they do not have access to resources that they can have readily there for kids who are falling towards that. So I think working to identify those sorts of outside of school treatments, that families that not only have the money for outsourcing it and going and having their kids committed, but also having resources that are available to low-income families, so that we can mark not only higher demographics, but all the way, that way we can supply equal help and resources to all of our people.
Thank you both. Yeah. I'm looking, does anyone else have questions? Yes, Ms. Owsley. Thank you.
So I'm really disturbed by the lack of programming in place for cessation assistance, not necessarily just from us or from our community, but from a national perspective. We have a huge gap there. I'm also aware of the fact that our mental health services for young people in our county is really egregiously underprepared to deal with the current mental health crisis in our county. So we are already in a situation where we are short-staffed, short-bedded, and not only is that the situation here, but there's no boilerplate program to say this is what they did elsewhere, and so this is what we're going to put in place here. I've done some reading recently on the correlation between ADD and tobacco use, because nicotine interacts with the ADD brain in a different way because it's a stimulant, and how up to 40 to 50% of folks who end up with a tobacco addiction are individuals with a brain impacted by ADD. And then I think about how difficult that level of nicotine would be to quit, because it is really hard to quit smoking. As someone who did that in her youth, shout out to my South administrators who gave me some out-of-school suspensions for that. I will say punishment doesn't work, because I didn't quit smoking until after high school, but it was hard to quit smoking. I cannot imagine teenagers today trying to quit a product that has the equivalent of that much nicotine in it, and then there's no services available to assist them. So I do feel like this is a significantly inadequate amount that we've gotten from the lawsuit, although I am so glad we decided to sue. And I'm really thankful for the work that this group has done to get us to this point. I guess what I'd like to say is that as soon as we find the program for the kids, please come back and give us that update, and know that we want to make sure that we're able to implement that. And I find it unlikely that there's any high school students watching this, but I suppose there's a possibility. Know that you can quit. You are capable of doing it, and it is not your fault. It is not your fault. You were a victim of a professional marketing campaign by billion-dollar companies that manipulated you into giving them money. And I think it is a cruel situation that you are dealing with, but it is possible to retrain your brain, as difficult as that sounds. So I don't want there to be kids out there that just watched our 30-minute advertisement for Juul products looking so cool. I mean, I know that's not what we did, but it's just hard to see. Here is our problem. We've identified it. We don't have any solutions just quite yet, and that would be very scary. So I just want people to know that it is possible to get help, and even if it seems daunting, it is something that can be done. So thank you very much, especially to the students, for your willingness to volunteer your time and your bravery for speaking openly and honestly here tonight. It is very appreciated. And I want to see you guys back so that we know what we can do to help get it across the line. So thank you.
Ms. Borgman, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you, Reese and John, for coming and giving up part of your evening to speak with the board. We really appreciate it, and I think we may have some really good candidates with you two as to fill our position for a coordinator, because you are both very articulate. You clearly are passionate about this, and I really appreciate the work, and I have no doubt that you've influenced other students just within your own friend group and at your own school, to really think twice about, picking up a vape. Reese, I have a specific question for you. Thank you for your honesty about, saying that you're 5 months clean. That's awesome. Congratulations, and thank you again for sharing that with us. I know that's not really something that's easy to talk about, but when you, through your journey, was there something that you learned, like what sort of impacted you the most, so you sort of were like, this is not the life I want to lead?
So, the biggest impact for me was I was friends with this girl who went to school with me, and we became very close friends with one another. And she was struggling with a lot of issues with drug usage, and it was much more severe than mine. And I think that seeing within her that struggle, it motivated both of us to be like, we want to be better, not just for the people around us, because we think that those people deserve better relationships and consistent relationships, but also that we wanted to be better for each other and ourselves, in order to give that fullness. Because, and this is going to sound really nerdy because I'm a huge nerd, but there was part of I could not give myself fully to learning, and I wanted to learn more, and it is very hard when you are struggling with an addiction that is constantly on your mind, in order to fully give yourself to growing as a person and becoming much more healthy. And I say this also, another reason I was so passionate to come forward and to work in the group is she had an intervention at our school by the district, and it was really heartbreaking because we don't have any specialists at the school equipped to deal with that. And so she was sent to our social workers who are equipped to deal with mental health problems. And while that was part of it and is obviously not completely separate from the struggles she was going through, it was really hard to see somebody who was ill-equipped to deal with this sort of thing end up dumping this problem into a non-school related topic. And it became a cycle of she wants help and she wants to get that. And I think seeing that in another person really motivated me to be, I don't want this to become a problem that stops me completely and stops me from doing the things that I want to do. And a lot of it was the motivation of, I understand what I'm going through, and I don't want other people to ever have to go through that horrible, horrible process of saying, I want help, but there is no one who can supply me with that. And for people who cannot find that help for themselves is very difficult. And I think the biggest motivation overall was that seeing other people struggle and wanting to be better for myself, and understanding that I cannot make an impact on those around me unless I myself have come to terms with what I'm struggling with and can start to move on from that.
You're very impressive.
And I'll just reiterate that in my communication with people at Children's Mercy, at KU, at other facilities, we hear that many mental health providers are able to deal with mental health problems but are not equipped to deal with addiction. And so many mental health providers are not willing to see students in the community who have an addiction because they aren't equipped to manage that. And so that's that gap we're trying to bridge, to find more people available to students in the community who have the addiction piece. Because there are also those specialists who will deal with other kinds of addiction, but not nicotine addiction. So we're finding the pieces and hoping to fill some of those missing pieces.
Yes, Ms. Hembry.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. It's really great to have something come before us that has so many people who've had their hands on it, that I can feel like we really covered all of our bases. I'm glad we're not putting up posters in the bathroom and crossing our fingers for a great outcome.
I promise.
My question is just sort of what happens next with this work group. Will you guys stay intact? Will you be monitoring how it goes, if it's working? What do we expect next for the work group?
Yeah, so we dissolved the work group after our last meeting. However, there's going to be, obviously, if you pass our, what we've submitted today, we'll have there's a group from the district that will continue to have conversations about what's working, what's not working, and also the process of looking at those positions that, if we were able to hire those positions and having that correspondence and them working directly in our schools with students with vaping addiction will, I think, give us a lot of feedback on what next steps would be.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all this work. Thank you for being part of the solution.
I'd like to thank you guys all for joining us tonight and just being part of giving your time for that work group. And Dr. Stubblefield and Dr. Ziegler, thanks for facilitating.
All right.
Thank you.
Our next discussion item, 3.2, is an assessment update. Dr. Hubbard?
So annually, this is the same assessment update that we have given, and so Dr. Grumman is here to share some assessment results with us. So Dr. Grumman, the floor is all yours.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Hubbard, Madam President, members of the board. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to share a few updates on our most recent enrollment and demographic trends and recent perspectives on student performance. Beginning with the strategic plan in mind, the two portions of our mission and destination that I intend to highlight this evening relate to an inclusive culture and an engaging community woven into evaluating student progress toward mastering essential competencies that lead to college and career readiness. Of course, each year I try to weave a common theme together through each of the data points, especially as we cover multiple aspects of the data. So tonight we're going to take a brief walk through three different topics: demographics, ACT, and Kansas assessments. The common theme that I chose to focus on across all three of these topics is to use historical data to better understand our current context, particularly this year as we progress toward a new strategic plan. So we'll start with a look back at student enrollment and demographics. This graph shows a 10-year history of student headcounts from September 20 of each school year. So you'll see from 2015 through 2020, our headcounts were relatively stable. We served approximately 27,500 students each year from 2015 through 2020. In 2021, in tandem with the pandemic, we do see an enrollment drop to just over 26,000 students. And then for the last 3 years or so, in 2022, 23, and 24, headcounts have fluctuated around 26,500 students. And as we know, the actual numbers will vary a little bit from day to day as students withdraw and enroll, but it's been in that ballpark of 26,500 for the last 3 years. This slide is a 10-year graphic of enrollment by race and ethnicity designations. So over the 10-year span, our racial makeup has changed slowly and only in a portion of the identified groups. We see the percentage of students identified as multiracial move from 5% in 2015 to our current percentage of 7% this year. Asian and Pacific Islanders as a combined group has fluctuated between 2 and 3% annually, and that's been relatively stable across the 10-year period. Our percentage of Black or African American students has been at a fairly constant 9% for the 10-year span. Students identified as Hispanic have increased from 18% to 21%, and students identified as white has decreased slightly from 65% to 62% over that 10-year time span. We do see a little more movement happening in the most recent 4 years following the pandemic compared with the first 5 years. For example, you see that the percentage of students identified as white remained at about 64% through 2020 before it began to decrease to the current 62%. So we've seen a little more change in the more recent years in the race and ethnicity categories. This graph shows a percentage of students who qualify for free or reduced lunch over the last 10 years. And again, we're really focused on the trend data here. So 10 years ago, we were at around 38%. We see a gradual decrease to about 35% by 2019. Then, if you remember, with the pandemic and offering of free lunch to all students, that percentage dropped to about 32%. You might recall we had to collect family income differently in 2021 and 2022 because of the free lunches being provided to all students. And then, of course, in 2023 and this year, which is the 2024 school year, we've reached a 10-year high of 39% of the students qualifying for free or reduced lunch based on that September 20th snapshot. Overall, our free and reduced rates have been, I would say, relatively stable over this last 10 years compared to changes that we used to see like 20 years ago. If we looked way back at our data from the late 90s and early 2000s, our free and reduced percentages, I would say, the way I put it in perspective is they nearly doubled every 5 years. For example, when I go back to 2002, we were sitting at about 11%. By 2012, it was at 33%. So we're seeing a fairly stable rate, I would say, over the last 10 years compared to some other time periods. As we look at the 10-year history of students with disabilities, you'll notice that we're experiencing a recent rise in our IEP numbers in the last 3 years. Historically, about 8 to 9% of our Shawnee Mission students had an IEP for disability. You can see a gradual increase to 10%, 11%, and 12% in the recent 3 years. This 10-year history shows the percentage of students identified as needing support to learn English, so English is not their first language. Commonly referred to as our ELL students. You see between 2015 and 2018, that percentage was steadily somewhere between 11 and 12%. You see a change in 2018 because of there's a change in the state's English proficiency assessment, and there's also a corresponding change in the exit criteria. So we do see a kind of a quick decrease between 2018 and 2019. Since 2019, our English language learner population has been held steady between that 8 and 9% range. Keep in mind, there's certainly turnover in this population, in some ways more turnover compared to other groups. For example, each year, approximately 300 students qualify to exit ELL services or they graduate, and then we have another 300 students replace them as newly identified as for ELL services. So while the percentage is fairly stable, the actual the faces behind the population of students here it has some turnover from year to year. Next, we'll pivot to the ACT. While we have heard and seen some individuals, organizations highlight the declining average composite scores as a sign of failure, I would argue that this view is incorrect and a little bit misleading. The real story is is that the changing role of exams like the ACT or the SAT in college admissions and enrollment, in combination with legislative funding for the ACT, also in combination with the pandemic that also occurred, is having a substantial effect on test-taking behaviors. So I'm going to begin with the concept of test optional admissions, which has been in place for 3 years, or at least on a widespread basis across the nation. So right now, more than 80% of colleges and universities offer ways for students to be admitted without having to provide an ACT or SAT score. However, this whole test optional conversation does carry a lot of different meanings, as you can see in this chart. Some schools still require a score under specific conditions. Others will not consider an ACT or SAT regardless of whether they are provided, and there's a lot of variance in between that we could, this particular slide, we could spend an hour talking about all the variances in test optional admissions, but just know that those exist across various universities across the nation. An added layer to this is that while scores may be optional for admissions, they might be required for certain types of enrollment or scholarships. But the bottom line here is that that test optional has very much changed the landscape of college admissions for students, families, and admissions offices. And it's changed the conversation of the role of ACT and what it means for students. So as we move into some test participation trends, here's some of the effects that we're seeing. So this table illustrates one of the notable shifts in ACT test taking patterns. So each row is a graduation cohort. So you're looking at the class of 2019, the class of 2020, the class of 2021, and so on. With the class of 2019, which is representative of much of our previous cohorts for the previous 20 years or so, the average ACT test taker with those cohorts took the ACT at least twice. That's where you see the average number of ACT completions per students. Or another way to look at this data is to know that about a third of the class took the ACT just once, and 2/3 of that class took the ACT 2 or more times. You see it shift quickly here with the class of 2020 and with the start of the pandemic, but then it also coincides with the implementation of a state-funded ACT, which currently is only available to 11th graders in the spring. And then you can see with the class of 2023, those proportions have flipped. So now 2/3 of students take the ACT just once, and 1/3 of our students are taking the ACT more than once. So in addition to the frequency of ACT test taking, let's take a look at when students take their last ACT, okay? So this table shows a time frame of when students completed their last ACT test. So again, we're looking at graduation cohorts across each row. So typically when the students take the ACT more than once, their scores tend to get better, right? Because they've had more opportunities to learn more content. And as you look at the class of 2019, the top row, where you see the green bars, 38% of the cohort took their last ACT in September or October of their senior year. 12% took their last ACT in December of their senior year, and so on. So there's a lot more senior year ACT completions as their last score. So overall, with that cohort, more than 2/3 of the class of 2019 took their last ACT sometime during their senior year. Again, as you're moving down, that pattern shifts quickly with the class of 2021, 22, and 23. So now almost 2/3 of our graduates take their last ACT in February or March of their junior year, which is, you can see in the graphic down below, that's a difference of at least 6 months of learning in relation to when they're last participating in their test. So comparing the results of the last 3 cohorts with the class of 2019 or earlier is really comparing apples and oranges, because these are substantially different test-taking populations. I'm going to reinforce this point by highlighting ACT's data on course consumption. In addition to taking the test, students do self-report a number of background characteristics. One of those is some of their course consumption. They report on what courses they've completed in high school. Okay, so ACT combines some of that course consumption information into a label called core or more, and then they have a less than core. So core or more refers to students who self-report that they've completed or nearly completed 4 years of English, 3 years of math, 3 years of science, and 3 years of social studies. So, which is, for us, that's part of their graduation requirements, right? So if you're taking the ACT in your junior year, you probably haven't completed those core requirements. Many students would most likely be reporting that they have not yet completed those core courses. And we can see that in this data as well. So in 2019, 79%, or when we look at the class of 2019, 79% of those students self-reported as core or more on their last ACT test. Okay? By 2023, only 40% are reporting completion of core or more. And then you can see the corresponding state and national percentages. They're also trending the same direction. Core or more percentages have fallen when you compare the 2019 participation with 2023. Again, it's not because students are taking fewer courses in high school, it's because students are taking the test fewer times, and their last test event is more often completed earlier in their high school experience. So then if we look at the results of the averages of the core or more completers compared to the less than core. So this graph shows the average ACT scores for core or more completers compared to the students who have not yet completed the core. Notice that the average scores for both groups is relatively flat. So your core completers in 2019 had an average score of 20.3, and core completers in the class of 2023 also had an average score of 24.3. The difference is that in 2019, 79% of students were core completers or were in progress of completing the core when they took their last ACT Whereas in 2023, 40% were core completers. So that course consumption has a ginormous impact on student ACT scores. That would be the one, I would say the number one controllable factor that influences a student's ACT score. So now when we finally look at those ACT averages for the past, here it's 24 years, right? It should be no surprise that the overall averages are down from 2000 to 2019. So for 20 years or more, we've been accustomed to seeing ACT averages around 23 or 24, but for those 20 years, the test-taking patterns were different, and also the college admissions criteria was different. The influences, the decisions that students were making in relation to college entrance exams was in a very different context. So students frequently took the ACT more than once, and much more often their last score was during their senior year, as you've seen in the data. So the decline in averages between 2020, again, I would contend that does not indicate that students are graduating with fewer skills. The scores are the result of 6 months of learning difference that occur when a student takes the ACT once in their junior year, and we've noted, and that's primarily in that free opportunity that they're provided at the 1st of March or the end of February, and then they choose to never take it again at that point because they have the opportunity to not share the score and meet admissions requirements in other ways. Now in this graph I did zoom in on the last 5 years because the most recent trend, the 2023 results, do make me cautiously optimistic about our ACT results. For our Shawnee Mission averages, our average of 21.3 for the class of 2023 is the same as the average of the class of 2022, so that downward trend is now plateaued. Meanwhile, statewide and national averages have continued to decline a bit. So as we have noted from some of the other data set summaries in the past 2 years, we're in some ways looking at a new baseline from which to plan forward, and we've talked about that with some other data sets and some other presentations as well.
Dr. Grumman, real quickly, do you happen to know the number of students that took this test in, let's say, 2018 compared to now?
So I've got a participation graph coming up. I will say participation increased and then has more recently decreased. So so we do see that effect here coming up. This graph does show average composite scores from the last 3 years by student group. We certainly have more work to do with some of our identified student groups, such as students who are identified as Black, Hispanic, students receiving free or reduced price lunch. The gray region that you see sort of highlighted in the graph, which stops at 21, that's the minimum score typically used for admissions decisions, especially in Kansas, when a score is required. But again, keep in mind that students can be admitted to many of our region's schools without a test score. Often if their GPA is high enough, they can then choose not to report the score if admissions is the only thing that they're thinking about. So going on to the participation graph, this graph does show up participation rates by student group. Last 3 years, so I didn't quite get back to 2018, so one area for celebration in this graph is that we did see an increase in participation rates among students identified with a disability. Most other groups do show a participation rate that trend up or down with the all students group. Historically, when the free opportunity was first implemented, we did see a bump up in participation rates.
What year was that?
So it was the class of 2020 when the opportunity was first existed, so it was the class of 2021 that then first started. And then we have seen a bit of a decline in ACT percent from that 75% with the class of 2021 to 66% with the class of 2023. So again, I would say that the test optional conversation that we could, I have a lot more thoughts behind that, but I'd be happy to share perhaps in longer time span. So, because it's an interesting conversation, especially to have with college admissions officers too, because they're seeing the same thing from their side of a picture of trying to make sure that they're communicating the right message to students about what the role of the test score should be in that process. For the third and final topic, I'll share some updates on Kansas assessment. Just to review, the Kansas assessment program consists of assessments in English language arts, mathematics, science, history, government, and English language proficiency. For ELA math and science, students receive a standard score, which is on a scale of 220 to 380, and they also receive a performance level. Before we get into the performance level descriptions, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time dwelling on these next three slides, but I do want to illustrate how really the Kansas assessment that our students took in 2023, this last spring, is actually a bit different than the version that of the state assessment that were envisioned 10 years ago in 2014. Okay, and this timeline kind of outlines some of those things. So our understanding of the college and career post-secondary readiness has also evolved over the 10 years, along with our clarity around what the state assessment does or does not measure. So there's been a lot of conversation of this time period. But you'd see that there has been a bit of an evolution of the current assessment system over time that you can kind of reflect on through here. So we initially started with a 4-part, 4-stage test with a performance task that was rolled into it, and that had since been removed. Also, over that timeline, we've seen some changes in the ELA and math curriculum as the adoption cycle and the review of curriculum isn't, that timeline isn't matched totally in sync with the assessment system, so the assessment has to change slightly over that course of time as well. Looking ahead to this spring, 2024, will be the last year of the current assessment system and its corresponding performance level descriptors. So in 2025, the state board will establish new performance level descriptors, a new data baseline, and hopefully a fresh perspective and greater clarity on what the Kansas assessments measure and predict and what they don't measure. So here are the performance level descriptors as they are currently written. Students scoring at level 1 are described as having a limited ability to understand and use the skills and knowledge needed for post-secondary readiness. Students scoring at level 2 are describing having a basic ability, level 3 an effective ability, level 4 an excellent ability to understand and use the skills and knowledge needed for post-secondary readiness. So, and then I recycled a slide from a couple of years ago. You may recall this slide when we highlighted the fact that many students who score at level 2 and even at level 1 are indeed succeeding at the post-secondary level. There's not an abrupt cliff between level 3 and level 2 or between any of the levels. Rather, the data really supports those descriptors as noted: limited, basic, effective, excellent. Again, statewide results shared by KSDE has confirmed our local results. As we look at compare state assessment outcomes with some post-secondary outcomes as well as ECT scores. So last year we had 2 simple goals for state assessment outcomes in 2023. We still have room for improvement. We still need to see movement in our data, right? So our 2 simple goals: reduce the number of students who are scoring at level 1, increase the number of students scoring at level 3 or 4. We do want to reduce the number of students who have limited ability to understand and use the skills, and we want to see an increase in students who are described as having an effective ability to understand and use the skills and knowledge needed for post-secondary readiness. So we still need to see movement in our data. So here's a slide showing percentages of students at each of the 4 levels in English language arts from 2019, 2021, 22, and 23. We did not have results in 2020, as you recall, because of the pandemic. Very excited to share that from 2022 to 2023, so the last 2 years, the percentage of students scoring at level 1 in ELA did decrease from 24.5 to 23.8. We also see that the percentage of students scoring at level 3 and 4 increased from 43.9 to 45.6% if we combine the green and the blue levels together. This graph shows the percentage of students at each of the 4 levels in math from the same 4 years. Again, I'm delighted to share that from 2022 to 23, the percentage of students scoring at level 1 in math decreased from 25.5% to 24.5%, and the percentage of students scoring at level 3 and 4 increased from 40.2% to 43.6%. So we continue to have work to do to reduce students at level 1 and increase students at levels 3 and 4, but I am excited to see that our data is moving in the right direction as we move forward. Didn't want to create 60 or more other graphs so as we dig into each of the student groups. So I created a summary chart that illustrates where we are with regard to, in this case, by grade level. So as we look at the data by grade level, there are 32 cells in this chart. The green check marks say that they met the goal of whether it's reducing level 1 or increasing level 3. They met the goal by 1% or more. Okay, if it's yellow, they were within 1% of the goals, so you might say they were fairly stable. And then if you see a red X, they missed the mentioned goal by more than 1%. In 20 of these cells, of these 32 cells, we met our goal of reducing level 1 or increasing level 3s and 4s with a change of at least 1%. And there are really only 5 instances where the data missed its goal by more than 1%. And obviously you can see in this data that the two levels, grade levels of concern are grade 5 and of course grade 10. As we look at the same data by identifying student groups, there are 40 cells in this table. In 24 of these cells, we met our goal of reducing level 1 or increasing the 3s and 4s with a change of at least 1%. And there's only one instance in this graph where the data missed the goal by more than 1%. So a lot of green check marks across each of our student groups. So where does this success come from? What I would summarize some of this as 2 words: sustained efforts in the areas. For example, district leadership, principals, and teachers continue to analyze data and monitor student progress as frequently as possible and as data becomes available. There's a lot of data right now that we're looking at with our wildly important goals that we're reviewing. Our buildings are reviewing up to at least every month, but up to every 2 weeks on some of our data points. We're taking a variety of evidence-based steps to increase the likelihood for continued student success. They include strategic use of resources to support interventions, support and training for professional learning communities, ongoing focus on DEIB, and ensuring that our systems are aligned around a cohesive response to intervention. We're actively monitoring classroom instruction through walkthroughs, which provide a continuous stream of formative feedback for teachers. We've established a level of what I think is a level of sustainability in support of our ELA core resources. If you remember, I think it was, are we in the 2nd year of our elementary ELA? So having that level of consistency also helps, which better supports the structures associated with the science of reading. We've also established a level of stability with our ELA and math intervention resources at all levels that teachers can leverage for targeted intervention and intensive supports. Finally, our principal and instructional coach meetings have strategically included instructionally focused agenda items throughout the year. And that concludes my formal presentation, and thank you for bearing with me in this data dive. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. I could talk with you for hours about this, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna Ms. Goodburn first.
Is there a specific reason why the state-funded test has to take place in March of the junior year? Have we presented this to the legislature at all and say, hey, is there any way we could move that into the fall of their senior year?
Right. So the best I can say at this point, I've initiated at our State Assessment Advisory Committee meeting, I did kind of ask that question, but I also think when we look back at the history of that state-funded opportunity, I sense that part of the concept, one, is when we think about what's happening during the junior year, that's when students are really doing their college exploration types of activities, right? They're maybe doing college visits, things like that. And I think some of the intent is that the state-funded opportunity, I think, was intended to be the students' maybe their first ACT opportunity, and then that would then allow them to decide whether or not they would, gave them time to take it a second time. And I think that was in a time frame in which many students were taking the ACT multiple times, and so this was their sort of their entry point of taking the ACT. But I think we're really early in that kind of that kind of discussion. We also have to think about what sort of what purpose are we trying to serve? If the state's funding it on the early side, that gives students a first experience at the ACT that provides time for them to take it again, or do you provide it sort of closer into their senior year when they don't have an opportunity or they have fewer opportunities to retake it, which has other implications for students. But I think the reason it's setting in the junior year, I think right now, is because it becomes part of that student decision-making process in terms of what kind of colleges that students might be, I'd say qualified for, from an admissions perspective. But definitely the landscape has changed. It's a worthwhile discussion, but yeah.
Any conversations with them funding multiple ones?
It's a great question. Great question.
All right. Ms. Ousley, were you done, Ms. Goodwin? Thank you.
So my first question is on the ACT presentation of the information. So those who take the tests, I think it was, which slide it was, it doesn't matter. For those who take the test multiple times, how are we measuring the difference in the scores themselves? So if we have only 30% of the students who are taking the test multiple times, and I'm assuming all of their scores are then included in the tabulations here, or how does that work? Like what tests are recorded for what students? Is it like your composite score that then gets recorded, or is it your last score, or what are we using for our data?
Outstanding question. So there are multiple ways that you can come up with an average, right? The composite score that ACT provides to us in a report, and it's the score that I'm sharing on this graph. This is based on a student's last ACT.
So it's not a composite, it's the last one.
It's their last test event, right?
Okay.
So if a student took it 5 times, it's only including that student once, and it's including their last test event. Another way you could calculate an average is to do what's called super scoring, right? So you could take all 5 and you could take their highest English, their highest math, their highest science, their highest reading scores, and then recalculate the composite, because it's just the average of the 4 numbers. And that's what's called super scoring, and then you could take an average there. And you will see that in the report that's also attached to the board agenda. So you do see some difference between the super score and the last test event. Well, super scoring only works if you take the test more than once.
Right. So there's this weird decoupling between colleges no longer using it as an admission criteria at the same time that it was made available by the legislature in order to even the admissions playing field, because there were students who weren't paying for it. And so because students then may not be as motivated to take it subsequent times because it's no longer an admission criteria, potentially, it leads to an interesting result with regards to the data that we have.
Correct.
Prior to the state providing the test financing, I believe the district had a program where you could apply for assistance in paying for the ACT for kids who had free and reduced lunch. Was that something similar to the?
There are ways to get fee reductions, yes.
But there's also tests available online for kids to practice on. Because if you're using it as a benchmark, then a lot of kids get a tutor or take a class or do extra work. It's not just the 6 months of academic programming that we're providing, but if you're going for the full ride scholarship at K-State, you have to have a 32.
Right.
You know that, so you're just going to take that test until you hit that 32 because you want to be competitive for the free ride. And so spending a few $100 on a tutor economically makes a lot of sense if that means you're not going to be paying for college. So I guess what I'm saying is, to have all of that information, that it could be a benchmark, that you could potentially get assistance in paying for additional tests, to know that there's tests online to practice with, that's a lot of information that needs to be communicated to students. And I'm not familiar with what it is that we're communicating to them to prepare them for that, and what maybe they're even listening to.
Right.
So I'm wondering, like, what is provided to kids to say, not only do you need to be thinking about the fact that you're going to be taking the ACT your junior year, but you probably potentially need to be taking practice tests your sophomore year. Like, we do the practice PSAT the sophomore year, but, all right, now I've brambled. I'm
Right.
going to have you
Well,
tell
and
me.
we do have students, many of our students as sophomores or juniors take what I call a locally scored ACT. They take the real, it's a release test that students participate in under standard conditions in the fall on the PSAT day, and then I create the answer sheet on that, and we do it's a locally scored, so I run the answer sheets and create reports for students, but it is in an ACT taken in standard conditions. So we do have that opportunity, so at minimum, students get that experience of a time test, of doing a paper pencil test and so on.
That's awesome. Is there like a notice sent out to kids about that?
Historically, it's been on the national, what has historically been on the National Day of Testing, which that's all shifting now, because the PSAT, beginning this year, the PSAT is totally online, and they provided a window, and actually this is going to, I think, speak to the calendar conversation as well. So now PSAT is offering, they allow you to take the PSAT at any point during the month of October, because it's an online test. So that landscape is changing as well. And we also are sometime down the road, I think, going to be moving toward an online ACT as well. So there's other things there's a lot of pieces that are going to be shifting besides the paper pencil opportunities.
And I guess I just would like to know that, because we unfortunately are judged by these numbers by folks who I think are not looking at the broader picture to see what the entire context is.
Right.
But there is a way to potentially change that is outside of how we're doing things now, with just regarding how we're educating kids on how to practice to take the test.
Right.
I mean, I wish that people could look at this and understand that this is not reflective of anything that's wrong, and it is actually reflective of a lot of things that are right. And then it's like looking at the other data with regards to where we're scoring on the state assessments. You know, if you look at I know that Mary's favorite slide is the kids being college ready at level 2 and even level 1, if you're looking at college persistence, and then the story that is then framed with regards to who is college ready, being a much more narrow group of students. But the slide showing that you have such a high persistence rate for kids, even in the first group, that tells a very different story. And so just making sure that we are somehow framing this information for people, you're doing an excellent job of it. I don't know where, I'm going to stop now, but thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Borgman.
Thank you, Dr. Grumman, as always. I love your data presentations. They're just so great. And so first of all, I mean, I'm in the thick of this right now at my own house. And so I do sort of see the benefit of the junior year because of that super score, right? So you take it once at school, and then, if you want to improve in an area, that's where.
Right. Lots of Saturday opportunities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I do understand the rationale behind that junior year. And just as someone who supports colleges and universities that have thought twice about using the ACT as sort of the gatekeeper, what is your biggest concern then with this sort of decline in fortunately now it's stabilization, but I guess, what is your biggest concern? Is it that we are being unfairly judged by academic performance of our students? Or what is your biggest concern about what the data is telling us?
Right, so mine would be, to your initial point, at the student level, right? We want to make sure students are provided the best possible opportunities available to them, right? And there's some difficult conversations if you're trying to figure out, with admissions, with scholarship opportunities, the variables have shifted dramatically. One of my concerns is, I would hate to have a student choose to not take an ACT at all, not provide a score, and unknowingly miss out on some opportunity because they were afraid to share that they had a composite score of a 22, which is, it's not a bad score, right? So that's where my fears lie on this data. Not as much on the public side of it, although that, yes, we do get judged on the data, and it's important that we share, what we have and the context of it. But I have to think back and, whose score is that? Is that our score, or is that the ACT is for the benefit of the student, and so to me, that's the first priority. And we do want to make sure that we're helping the counsel students in the right ways. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a College Board conference, which is a mixture of K-12 counselors and then lots and lots of admissions people. And I listened to 2 or 3 different panel discussions around the same kind of topic of the role of, standardized testing and admissions decisions. And one of the things, even on the admissions side, even on the college side, is they're struggling with making sure that they're communicating the right kind of information to students through their websites, because there is some variance. Most admissions officers would say, send us all your scores, we'd love to have them. And they don't want, their intent really is never to use, I shouldn't say never, because it's, but typically the intent is not to use a score to keep somebody from being admitted. Right? Usually if you're not admitted, it would be some other, combination of criteria, because often looking at course consumptions and those kind of things. But most places, they do want as much data as possible to get the broadest picture possible for students. But it's hard to build that trust and be clear on all those communication pieces, both from the college side of things and also from our side of things as well. And part of our challenge is, understanding what the colleges are looking for too. So there's communication on all fronts here that we're contending with.
Can I talk? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you. My question is just, I'm concerned when I look at this average ACT composite by student group that such a significant portion of our students are falling below that gray line that the Kansas regions have set.
Right.
I'm interpreting that as the average Black or Hispanic or free and reduced student that's coming out of Shawnee Mission does not meet the admissions, at least one particular admissions criteria for a Kansas university. Am I interpreting that right? And if so, what does that mean? What does that mean for the district?
It's an area of, it's a huge area of concern that's we see in Shawnee Mission, we see statewide, we see nationally. I think the first piece, because ACT is this data is a huge lag measure, right? The class of 2023, really, they took their ACT in 2020, almost 2 years ago, right? And so, but one of the things we really need to be looking at is course consumption. One of the challenges, I would say, is when some of these groups are more mobile than others. So, if we get kids into the right courses and on track to graduate, right, beginning in middle school and moving forward, then they're going to be successful. But the pieces that we continue to have to take a close look at are things like chronic absenteeism, at failure rates, at discipline, and so on. So there's some of these other measures that are going to play, that play into this, to these results as well. Relationships with students, all sorts of things. So, but yeah, that is a challenge, is making sure that all student groups have those opportunities.
Yeah, I would just add that in terms of eliminating barriers for our students of color to access advanced coursework, to provide them proper supports, to provide them with scaffolding and on-ramps to some of these courses. I think those are the conversations that we will continue to have and figure out ways to encourage our schools to implement some of those things as well.
Thank you.
I'll try to, I think some of the questions I had have been touched on really nicely. I just wanted to, I found this really very informative. I thank you for how the information was presented. Kind of beginning with just looking at the core consumption and understanding ACTs in relation to core consumption. I think, these points were just made now. If we can help students make sure that they complete those core courses, that they're coming to school, that we're addressing kind of that chronic absenteeism, helping kids pass those core courses, that to me is an informative way to think about then the connection between that and how they might perform and be ready for college or career. So I really like looking at that data this way. And then love the 2 gains scores tables with, kind of looking to see where we're making progress in the green check and where we're kind of holding steady. I think those are both super helpful to look at. I really appreciated seeing the gains from all the really persistent and committed work of our leadership and staff around seeing gains for our students eligible for free lunch. That's a big portion of our population, and that I think is the trend we want to see, as well as our students with disabilities. I think, so gains across the board are phenomenal. Those 2 groups have stated, learning behavior challenges and significant barriers to learning. So I think that was, I appreciate being able to see that and looking at it for being accountable to all of our students and breaking it out that way. And I really wasn't surprised in looking at by grade level. If you look at our 10th graders, there's a number of factors. I don't want to see red, right? We want to see green across the board. But those are the students who have experienced inadequate funding the longest. I think they were in grade school, in those early grades when the block grants hit, and we were under that severe crisis of whether school's going to open year after year after year. So in those early formative learning years, I think that group of students has had kind of the most challenging educational experience. So that, plus in 10th grade, there's less, I think, of a commitment to those tests. I think I've probably, my broken record is I really appreciate looking at kids who are at level 2 and above, who are kind of closest to that, performing at grade level and above, particularly since we know they're kind of going on to post-secondary with such strong rates and persisting in school. And so I look at these charts on, where our students are at across those levels of performance, and I see that 75%, more than 75% of our students in math and English language arts are on track, or at grade level, on track and above for post-secondary readiness. And that's really powerful coming from kind of where we've been in terms of lots of disruptions to learning and just getting our resources from for state aid in place. So I appreciate that. So those 2 slides, I think, really are informative for that. Last one on the college going and persistence, kind of really putting it all together. So I really like the way this is presented. I think it's very informative, and thank you. All right. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you,
Anybody
Dr.
need
Gurman.
Coffee? Can I have coffee? I would love some coffee too. Can we pass it? Okay, thanks. How about, where am I? I'm sorry, I need to pull up my agenda. I think I would just say have people take breaks as they take a break. Sorry. Let me get back. Okay, so we have one more presentation, and thank you so much for sticking around. This meeting's gotten long, so I appreciate that you have been here for quite a while. And it's, relevant, I think, to why we had such a full house earlier tonight, the work that you are presenting, so thank you. So this is our last discussion item, Agenda 3.3, Character Strong presentation. Dr. Hubbard.
And I just want to make sure that you see the correlation between this and action item 7.05, where we will be recommending the adoption of a resource, Character Strong. So Dr. Dennis, I'm going to turn to you.
Thank you, Dr. Hubbard, Dr. Sinclair, members of the board. I'm grateful this evening to have the opportunity to present with a passionate, committed group of people. From your left, Paula Pyle, who is a social worker from Benninghoven, Kathy Lorino from Rushton, also a social worker, Jenna Hansen, 5th grade teacher at Rising Star, and Shanita Galway from Brookridge. I still want to say East Antioch, but from Brookridge, an admin intern. Next slide, please. What we're going to share, as Dr. Hubbard mentioned, does relate to what we've been talking about this evening. It relates and aligns directly with our strategic plan. I think all of these areas, but especially the third and final area about interpersonal skills. So this is very relevant to our discussion this evening. It also relates to our portrait of a graduate, which comes out of our strategic plan, but we also know that we want to have students with interpersonal skills, with resilience, with who are committed citizens, and who also have that personalized learning. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over now to, who's taking it? Shanita, and she's going to share with you a little bit of the background of our team and how we got to this point.
Thank you for having us. And so, like Dr. Dennis said, I would like to share the background work and we'll kind of move forward from there. So in September 2018, sorry for not saying next slide, but September 2018, our district began the process of creating the Cornerstone cadre. There was an email sent out by administration asking if anyone was interested in joining the cadre, and our cadre is comprised of administrators, social workers, counselors, teachers, and so forth that all came together that saw a need for social emotional learning. In 2019, in September and December, as a cadre, we spent time looking at KSDE's SECD standards, and we wanted to, as a cadre, just like our academics, have eight priority standards at each grade level, pre-K through 12th grade, that teachers can refer to and see if students are making those great gains. Although they will be hitting other standards, we want it to have priority standards in each grade level. And then in February 2020, our cadre selected the 8 priority standards for Shawnee Mission School District. I really loved this because we really took the time of seeing different perspectives of what we felt was a great need in pre-K all the way up to 12th grade, and how can we see it progress across all grade levels. And then in January 2022, we wanted to take it a step further and see how can we measure that, just like with our academics. And so we identified as a cadre for each grade level, for each standard, priority standard that we chose, how to measure it, identify possible criteria for successfully demonstrating the standard. We had the question, how would you know if your student has mastered that skill? And then identify curricular, cross-curricular, just so teachers and other staff members could see how it could be embedded throughout the academic day. In July 7th, 2022, we created as a cadre the introduction of Cornerstone Standards, a document that had the 8 priority standards, and we also wanted to have monthly themes that correlated with our priority standards as well. And it took a lot of conversations and what we felt was a great need for our students. And then from there, in fall 2022, it was presented to administration in school buildings, the document, the Cornerstone, the introduction of Cornerstone document. And within that, we also had where staff members could click on the grade level, and it gave a description of that priority standard. It gave resources and activities that teachers could try out. And then at the end of that first semester, we sent out a survey as a cadre. We put together a survey because we wanted feedback, and we wanted to know what we needed to mold and grow upon. And so with that, we reviewed the Cornerstone survey feedback in November as a cadre, and we saw a need that we needed more clarity among our Shawnee Mission employees on what we were trying to establish in our district. And so we presented at the instructional fair, and then we had a survey at the end of that, and we reviewed it as a cadre as well. And then and that was in January 2023. In April of 2023, we wanted to, as a cadre, review and revise the monthly themes, and we kind of aligned it with Read Across SMSD as well. And then from there, March 9th of last year, 2023, we presented to KISA OVT, and we just shared our background of where we started and where we're at, and then where we want it to go. And then moving on to the timeline and process. From there, we decided as a cadre we wanted to find a resource that can help guide the instruction of SEL in our district. And so we worked together to create a rubric where it had, for example, tier, if this resource had a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 support, the cost, if we purchased this resource, if it was easy to implement for teachers as well. And so we had those discussions, and then over the summer of 2023, we met with various SEL resources. They came and spoke with us about their program and what they could offer, and then we were able to narrow it down to our top 3 resources that we wanted to pilot. And I'm gonna pass it on.
Okay, so from there. There we go. So from there, we had our 3 resources chosen, and 14 schools were also chosen to pilot from August to October of this school year. The schools that were chosen represented the diversity of the district across all of the grade levels. After that, we asked teachers and staff to fill out a survey, which the goal was to see their initial impressions. They hadn't used it very much, and how easy was it to implement, especially at the beginning of the school year. In October of this year, we had parents, students, and staff complete a survey as well. So for students, we were looking at, could they relate to the curriculum? Did they see themselves as the characters and the content? Did it impact their daily and emotional functioning at all? Did they notice anything different? And the family as well. Did they notice a positive impact on their students? Did they see anything in their homes or in the community? Were their children talking about it? And then for teachers, it was what are their final impressions, and did they feel it was effective with their students? We got together as a cadre on November 7th, and we looked over all of the surveys and the assessments and came to our final decision. So we looked at the resources with the rubrics that we had created. We looked at the data to make a data-driven decision to recommend to you all. These are some things that our rubrics considered. So the tiered instructions, as Shawnita was talking about, we wanted something from pre-K all the way to 12th grade with minimal prep
an ease of implementation for teachers, professional development that could be provided, connecting to the curriculum areas, being aligned, cost efficient, family and community components, research-based, CASEL aligned, and DEIB included as well. And here are a list of our pilot schools. So we had Character Strong, Second Step, and then our last choice was Paths Emozi.
Can you hear me now? There we go. I'm Kathy Lorino, and I'm a school social worker. I'm starting my 27th year in Shawnee Mission. And I know Cornerstone Cadre kind of kicked off in 2018, but I have been part of a team of people that had conversations long before that. And I was thinking back, Christy, when you met with maybe 3 of us, social workers, a long time ago, about our concern with how things were being implemented piecemeal. And I know as a team, when we, Shawnee talked about, like, we decided to set priority standards and we want schools to go on their way and figure out how to do it. And then, okay, we need to make it a little tighter. Let's come up with themes about how we were going to do that. And I think one of the things that the cadre kept coming back to is the inconsistency across our schools. Inconsistencies across all the elementaries, across middle school, across high school. And so I kind of think, I know, Shanita, you said we looked at 5, but when we first sat down and were looking at curriculums, I think we probably looked at like a lot, 11. Oh, she found them, 11. And narrowed it down to Character Strong, Second Step, and Paths Emozi. And as a team, we really dug into comparing and contrasting those 3, and then also looking at both surveys as well as the information from parent surveys and student surveys to really tease out and weight which one maybe stood out. One of the things that when we did the weighting, there were 2 clear leaders, Character Strong and Second Step, but they were very close. But one of the things we kept coming back to was the importance of that pre-K through 12, that didn't just look at scope and sequence, but looked at progression of skills, specifically when it comes to social emotional learning. So how can we stair-step kids all the way from pre-K through 12? I am super excited to be sitting in front of the board and saying, hey, we can have a plan, just like we do with reading curriculums or math curriculums. And as a social worker, I often feel like I'm hitting my head against a wall. Let's just keep doing more reading and math, and missing the significant contribution of how social emotional learning can impact reading and math and other academic success. It's a big piece that I feel like we've been missing, and I am super excited, next slide, to be recommending, next slide, Character Strong, as one that this team spent a lot of time kind of delving into and coming up with this recommendation for the board. And Paula's going to talk a little bit more about Character Strong.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. So why Character Strong? Character Strong is aligned with KSDE SECD standards and CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, and our strategic plan. It is a grade level specific resource for pre-K through senior year, representative across cultures and abilities. Web-based and high-impact digital lessons make it user-friendly and flexible for staff. In addition, it provides research-based, tiered instruction and resources for family engagement. All materials are English and Spanish. Next slide. Having a deep connection between life skills and character development, Character Strong's explicit, direct instruction leads to 3 outcomes: be kind, be strong, be well. Centered around 1 character trait per month and aligned to the 5 CASEL competencies of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making, It is also vertically aligned to build skills effectively. Next slide. Monthly character traits are outcome and skill aligned. Be kind connects to respect, empathy, and cooperation, targeting social skills and conflict resolution. Be strong ties to responsibility, perseverance, courage, teaching focus, organization, and goal setting. Be well traits include gratitude, honesty, and creativity, instructing on emotion regulation. Now, Dr. Dennis will talk to us about next steps.
So pending your consideration and approval, this is just the beginning for us. So we know that any product that we implement requires a significant professional learning component. We are set to begin that with the instructional fair in January, so they will be here to present both at the elementary and the secondary level. They are also going to provide for us some bite-sized pieces that can be used at staff meetings throughout the rest of the school year. Beyond that, the cadre continues to meet, or will continue to meet, and we will work with the administrators to develop a specific implementation plan when we come back together next, I guess early next semester. So next slide, please. We are happy to stand for any questions.
Ms. Hasley?
At the last State Board of Education meeting, there was a call from folks during their public comment period to eliminate social emotional learning from the state standards and to push to remove funding for social emotional learning at the state level. And I think it is useful for folks to know and to have the background information on why Kansas adopted social emotional learning standards as part of the curriculum. I think it was 11 years ago. It was like in 2012, 2011, from a couple of different perspectives, and I'm hoping that one of you can speak to that. But I know the business community had emphasized how significant these skills were for employability, and we are always emphasizing real-world learning and how this can translate into the market. Like, this is a market value asset. I guess we could ask any HR professional, but we won't drag Dr. Schumacher into it for right now. But it is to be able to relate to people. That's super important. But then it also has like this incredibly important social emotional learning for the mental health benefit of our students and to create good citizens who value diversity and treat each other with respect. And so I think we have the foundation for that from the dais, but I don't know that if everyone else does. And so if you, the experts, could speak to those things that this curriculum brings, I think that would be really useful.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
It frightens me to think about eliminating that from the state standards. I think in Kansas, in the state of Kansas, when they talk about like, we want students to be college and career ready, a big portion of that is those soft skills. And I think our kids, for whatever reason, don't have as many as maybe they have in the past. I think that kids don't play the same way they used to. Kids don't have their classrooms set up the same way they used to. The way education has evolved it's not a bad thing, but it creates opportunities for kids to miss out on developing some of those soft skills that maybe they had at one point. I was just talking to, I think it was a fourth grade or a fifth grade teacher about discipline related to handwriting, right? We don't focus on handwriting at all, but when we did, the amount of time that kids would have to persist to be able to perfect that taught endurance and persistence. And though we don't need them to be good handwriters anymore, I think the lagging skill is that resilience and persistence, that grit that in our data from Panorama, it says we struggle with across the board. So I think we have real-time data in the Panorama stuff that we've done and in across the state of Kansas when they're saying, hey, we want kids to be timely. We want them to show up on work
on time. We want them to be able to problem solve, to be able to resolve conflicts with their peers and their coworkers. Those are things like I see in my office every single day that kids struggle with on an ongoing basis. And I think that if, as a school district, as the state has said, we're doing these priority standards for a long time. And we're just now saying, okay, across the board, we're going to have a systematic way of how we're going to teach that or go about incorporating it into the school day. I think it's a great thing that if the district chooses to move forward, I can only imagine the long-term impact it could have on academic results. Because I think there is a correlation. Like I said, you can keep doing reading and math, but sometimes you got to teach kids how to interact with materials in a way that allows them to persist, to endure, to manage frustrations, and to try even when it's hard. So.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to add on to that. I think too, like what we had tried to do at the start of creating the grade level guides where they were clickable links and we had activities listed for teachers to go and find them, it just was still too much to expect teachers to be able to have time to do that, in addition to it being completely inconsistent from school to school, grade level to grade level. And then another thing with this program, when Paula was saying that each of the be kind, be well, there were life skills within those of organizing and focusing and things like that. So we just felt that this program really helped overall.
I would add, with the program as well, it's for each grade level it's different to meet the need. Although they have those be well, it's something that fits. Something different for a kindergartner could have as a focus would look different for a senior. And so they are very diverse in that way as well.
Thank you. I appreciate the commitment and grit and persistence to strengthening and enhancing social emotional learning in Shawnee Mission. I mean, just looking at this background and even speaking to the work that predated it is really compelling. So thank you for that. I guess you answered my question kind of about teacher fidelity in terms of what of the 11 down to 3 kind of programs seem to be effective. But what about, can you just describe, you had also mentioned kind of student engagement. What did that look like for students who actually, you know, when you were kind of trying to compare?
Well, being a pilot school, I mean, the engagement with Character Strong was they are engaged with the videos that they provide, but we also surveyed the students and the teachers in that with that engagement piece, and the surveys were.
They were relating to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, it really is its own. Yeah. Okay.
There were some similarities between the way teachers and students responded to Character Strong and Second Step. I think what was compelling for us is that Character Strong was pre-K through 12, that it was pretty interactive. The kids responded to it really well, and they were close, but I think that, you know, as our team looked at that, we felt like that Character Strong rose above and provided the opportunities that our students here in Shawnee Mission need.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other? Yeah, Ms. Boyd-Norena?
Thank you for the presentation. One question that I have, what attributes of the family engagement portion really spoke to you all? Were the responses from, if families receive surveys, were the responses well, or because that would be an indicator of as we move forward?
The Character Strong has a parent newsletter that goes home. It offered, I think it was in it was in English and Spanish. Trying to think of some other opportunities for, I think they were already kind of prepackaged for the teachers too, which made it easy to drop into their teacher newsletters to say, hey, here's the skill that we're teaching. You can review this at home too, talk to it at home. Were you talking about
parent responses on the survey?
The surveys that we sent to them.
If any went out while you were piloting, what were those responses? And just, was there anything other than newsletters or that you can remember, that you recall that really stuck out to you as far as that key critical family engagement component?
We had a lot, do you have access to, we had a lot of pretty, we sorted some of the, because they put in their comments, so we sorted comments of like which ones were really positive and some themes that came across, but I'm sorry, I don't remember them off the top of my head.
Do you have that?
One of the things that came through was not only newsletters, but planning for community events.
Oh, yeah.
This is the product that got the most positive response in that area.
Thank you. Didn't want to put you on the spot,
No,
but that's
no,
always,
yeah.
that's a core concept for me.
I would also say administration sending out emails to families too about just the program itself that helped parents to understand to what we were trying to do as well.
It's incredibly thorough and layered and really connected across all the different levels that I think are required to help our kids be engaged and self-actualize. So I really appreciate this work. Does anybody else have any other questions, or Dr. Hubbard?
I would just like to say thank you all for having the endurance to persist through a really long meeting. Now, on a serious note, just thank you for your time and commitment. I know it seems like an extremely long, drawn-out process because we had COVID right in the middle and we weren't able to get subs and finish the process. So this is one of those cadres and part of the strategic plan that was delayed due to COVID. We didn't have a lot of this, but this is one of the particular areas where we were really on a roll and then it was like, boom. And so I'm thankful that they stayed with it, and here we are. So thank you all for your time and commitment, and not just you all, but everyone that participated on that cadre.
Yeah, really important work. Thank you. Okay. All right. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
No, thank you. Thank you.
That was the most polite no thank you.
Yeah, that was, I'm sorry, that was mean.
I do want to point out Amber is sitting back there, and she was also part of the team. So thanks for
Thank you, Amber.
being here.
All right, so this brings us to the consent portion of our agenda. We have items 4.1 through 6.1, and if there are no requests to pull a consent item, I'm seeking approval.
Move approval, Hembry.
Second, Goodburn.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right. Now we have 9 action items. Several of them are somewhat interrelated, but we'll begin with 7.1, approval of a revision to the school year 25 calendar.
So I just want to remind everyone that there's a lot of things that go into calendars. Hours students have to attend. It's different for seniors than it is other students. Balancing semesters, just holidays from all of our families. While we can't meet all of those holidays, we do our best to avoid what we can. But just, it's not as easy as saying, oh, here's a calendar. So I just want to make sure that we talk about that. And then also, Dr. Dennis does a really nice job in getting feedback from a variety of people. And then once we have a really solid draft, taking that draft to both NEA Shawnee Mission as well as SMAC PTA to get feedback there. And so this approval of 7.01, Dr. Dennis, anything you want to add in regards to why we're bringing that revision, I would appreciate.
It's based on feedback. There are 3 specific changes we're requesting with this 24-25 calendar. One of them is related to what Dr. Grumman was talking about. We've had an early release for high school during the testing day, and we no longer need that because of the changes in the window. In addition, due to teacher feedback, we are moving the professional learning day in November from the 4th, Monday the 4th, to Friday the 1st, which happens to be the day after Halloween. So that made some sense. And then a specific request from teachers, and this is one that rolls forward as well. The parent-teacher conference day in February, the Friday, In the past, secondary schools have been in class, and elementary has had that day of conferences. Teachers requested that all teachers have an opportunity to work with parents on that day, so that's the request for that change.
All right. Okay, so I need a motion and a second.
Move approval, Hembry.
All right, second.
Second, Owsley.
All right, any questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, so our other 7.2 are calendar for school year 26.
So again, all of those factors into play in this calendar as well. Dr. Dennis, anything you want to add that stands out in this calendar?
Again, based on feedback, there's some changes that were made. Teacher feedback led to the Professional Learning Day in April 17th. That date was chosen with their input. In addition, we did move a Professional Learning Day off of Halloween. This is based on parent input, and moved it to November 3rd. So again, that parent input, the teacher input is vital to this process.
Thank you for seeking that.
Move approval, Hembry.
All right, second.
Second, Owsley.
All right, any questions? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, we have the next two items, 7.3 and 7.4, about approval of, let's begin with approval of the 24-25 high school program planning guide. Dr. Hubbard.
So typically, program guides, we would oftentimes put in consent, but because of the graduation requirement change that greatly impacted this high school planning guide, I thought it was important for us to talk about it. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stubblefield to start this conversation.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, just want to recognize Coach Vesta, who came and spoke very passionately about our PE teachers. We did have representation from PE teachers during those meetings, and again spoke about all of the wonderful benefits that physical education has on our students, and I think we all agreed with that 100%. And that was one of the, going from a 1.0 requirement to a 0.5 requirement for PE did take a lot of time in terms of having the conversation, kind of going back and forth, pros and cons. Again, very passionate about the benefits of that. But I also will say that, some of our other elective teachers who may not have been represented in that meeting would also be just as passionate about their content area, as well as our PE teachers, and trying to balance, where to reduce and where would that come out of based on, based on the state requirements. So I would say that we had to take it to a vote. I mean, and the vote was 13-12. 13 that wanted to keep the requirement at 1.0, and 12
other way around.
Oh, I'm sorry. 13 that did not, that wanted to be at 0.5, and then 12 that wanted to keep it at a 1.0. So again, very passionate conversation about that. I think ultimately in the end, there was some data that was presented where talked about the number of students that take more than one PE credit, and it was a pretty high percentage, and we felt like we were not telling kids that they could not take a 1.0 of PE, and I think that kind of resonated with the group, that if you desire to take 1.0 or more of PE, then you can still do that under these guidelines.
I was going to say that sounds like my brother who took 3 bowling 101s at KU. But okay.
Absolutely, and he, under the proposal, that he could still do that.
All right, well, let's take a motion and then we can discuss if we have a second. All right, do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve, Borgman.
All right, second?
Second, Owsley.
Okay. Any questions or?
I have a question.
Yes.
So
Ms.
what
Borgman.
is the why behind the change then? Is it, I won't put words in your mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So with the new state requirements, going from from ELA that was 4.0 requirement to 3.5 and adding communications to that half, and then also adding STEM to the state requirement. What Shawnee Mission was requiring was getting limited, right? And so we started having to make some decisions on what we would have to let go so that we can remain at the current 23.5 credits for graduation in Shawnee Mission. We felt like increasing that would create another barrier for graduation for a lot of our students.
And I would add to that with our focus on real-world learning, a lot of those credits come out of the elective pool, and that elective pool was being reduced.
Dr. Dennis, and I'm not sure who else, I appreciate the summary document that was, sometimes in the past there's been a red line of the program, but I think that pulling this together in this memo in this format was very helpful. And I appreciate that the decision process was not easy, right? There was
Correct.
a very thorough conversation, but, and I have to respect the committee process and the final recommendation and.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. This was not, these decisions were not made in a vacuum. They weren't had in the superintendent's office or my office or Dr. Dennis's office. This was a group of educators across the district that came together to really hash this out, have great conversations, and really make thoughtful determinations based on what's in the best interest of our students. And I think that's kind of was the main concern, or the main thing that we wanted to get out of that is what are decisions that we're making that's going to benefit kids.
I also did ask the student advisory group their thoughts. It wasn't a formal vote by any means, but we just had a discussion about it. And the general consensus was that let us choose. We want to be able to choose. They didn't think that, they actually thought most kids would go ahead and continue to take more than the 0.5, but let us choose what our electives are.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Ms. Humphrey?
Knowing that STEM has been added as a requirement for the first time ever, right? We've never had STEM classes required. Did the State Board of Ed provide guidance to us on what would qualify as STEM, or is that at the discretion of the local?
It was,
they
provided limited.
Comment brought it up, so I'm just curious.
They provided some limited direction, but it was primarily up to the local decision making. And they came up with a list of, I think it was around 65, maybe a little bit more than 65 courses that we felt like would meet that.
Yeah. Now, if I'm not mistaken, they did say the course should be an advanced course.
That's correct.
That was the guidance that they gave us.
Great, thank you.
I have one.
Yeah, Ms. Borgman.
Are other districts dropping from 1 to 0.5?
We surveyed other districts in the county, and I'm not going to name any districts, but it was pretty evenly split. Some were and some were not.
All right.
The question I continued to pose was, why is PE more important than any other content going above what the state recommended? So the state recommends 3 math. We're not saying we should do 4. We let kids choose whether to do 4. And so why would PE be different than any other content that we have? And I could never get a solid answer to that question.
All right.
I just have one quick question. The state, our requirements for graduation and our requirements for graduation, they're not quite the same, or they are the same?
The state requirement is 21 and ours is 23.5.
So we're already requiring more than
But
what the state
the
requires.
the difference is the electives.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
And I assume the committee also discussed this. Clearly, we value all of these courses and programs.
And teachers.
And teachers. Yes. All right.
I have one question.
Yes,
And if a student is 4 years with us every hour of the day, how many credits can they get?
28.
28. Okay, so then they have an additional, whatever that math, Too late. Usually very good with math. 4.5 electives, basically, that they can choose. So, because I was thinking to myself, gosh, we're limiting the electives now by taking 0.5 from it, but actually it's more. Okay.
Okay. All right.
I
So I
can
think
see
we
why
have.
this was a tough vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How often did you?
We met
many times?
5 times
Five.
beginning in May.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I believe.
I just want to say a thank you to those teachers that put in the time to have the hard, it was a hard discussion.
Teachers,
It was tough.
and administrate.
Counselors.
Yep, counselors.
So thanks to that entire committee for putting in the work.
And I personally, I feel like I need to respect, at least where I'm coming from, is respecting the process and having to settle on a decision. So thank you.
And just for the record, I would have been the kid that had 4 credits of PE. So
my kids did.
It was hard for me.
One last thing, if I may. I want to make sure that everybody understands that these new requirements go into effect for the incoming freshman class. So everybody who is currently in high school would continue under the existing graduation requirements.
2028?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to take a vote? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 6-1. All right. Agenda item 7.4, approval of the 24-25 middle school program planning guide. Dr. Hubbard?
Dr. Dennis, do you have anything to add here?
No, again, the graduation requirements are reflected in this document because everybody in the middle school currently would be affected by the new graduation requirements.
Again, I appreciate that summary document that was prepared. It was helpful to process a bit. All right, do I have a motion to approve?
Move approval, Goodburn.
Second?
Second, Hembry.
All right, any additional questions?
Are there any changes to this middle school program guide based on the new requirements at the high school level, or is it just a consistency issue? Are there any new classes being offered? Or?
There are some new classes, and they're outlined in there, but they're not a direct result of the graduation requirements.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right. 7.5, approval of character strong adoption and purchase. Dr. Hubbard? Wait, did I miss one?
No, that's right.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry.
Move approval, Hembry.
All right.
Second, Goodburn.
Okay. Any additional questions from our presentation? All right. Dr. Hubbard?
I'm just recommending approval of the adoption and purchase of Character Strong as an instructional resource to support social and emotional learning. It's budgeted through ESSER. The total approximate cost will be about $294,000. And this includes full access to all materials for 3 years, as well as the professional learning for staff that will be required.
All right. Okay. So we're ready for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. 7.6, approval of new board policy, JBCD, open enrollment, second reading.
So this first one, we have prepared this policy as required by the new state statutes regarding enrollment of non-resident students. This policy was based on recommended KASB model policy with adjustments to reflect the Shawnee Mission practices. It did go through policy review committee. We also had a hearing at the November 13th meeting and met all the obligations by law regarding this policy.
All right, do I have a motion?
Move approval, Goodburn.
Second?
Second, Owsley.
All right, any questions or comments? I think I'm just going to add, while I don't appreciate how this policy came to be, I don't think it was a problem that needed to be solved. I will go ahead and take a motion to, or a vote to approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, 7.7, approval of revised board policy JBC, student admissions to withdrawals from school. Second reading.
Dr. Sinclair, can we package 7 and 8 by chance?
Yes, please.
So both of these policies were needed, the adjustments were needed to account for the new open enrollment policy and to also just be consistent with that policy. I want to just recap the timeline real quickly from March 1 to April 30th in district transfer window. So We may start that a little bit earlier, actually, this coming year. We're still really hammering out those timelines, but I believe that window's February 1. That window will open in February 1, not March 1, sorry. And then that will be for our in-district students who would like to transfer, as well as employee children that we know at that time. And then May 1st, we will bring recommendations to the board regarding capacity, likely even do that in April potentially, depending on just the timing of the meeting. June 1 to June 30 will be open enrollment for non-resident students, and then by July 15th, the non-resident student applicants will be informed of those decisions. The in-district window transfers will be informed much earlier than that. So those are the two policies for 7.07 and 7.8, again, needed to adjust for the open enrollment policy.
Okay, thank you. Let's take the vote one at a time. I appreciate the combined explanation. Okay, so 7.7, policy JBC. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move approval, Hembry.
Second?
Second, Ousley.
All right, any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, so 7.8, policy JBCB. Motion to approve?
Move approval, Hembry.
Thanks. Second?
Second, Borgman.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And our final action item, 7.9, approval of revised policy, board policy DJAB, authorization to purchase. Second reading.
Again, this is a second read, and it really is a semantics and cleanup of position titles and the threshold of approval in the chain of moving through a requisition.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move approval, Goodburn.
Second?
Second,
Boyd
Hembry.
Nerona. Okay, thank you. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, that completes our action items, and we are at 8.1 board comments. I would just like to say we saved this really long and intense meeting, Brad and Sarah, to delay your departure. You will be missed. I am going to open the floor to board comments. And
I have comments.
all right, Ms. Ousley.
I mean, I could comment about a lot of things this evening. So Brad and Sarah, you're going to be really, really missed. I know that's a lot of relays. I'm not very eloquent. But serving with you has been a privilege and an honor. And I'm so happy for you that you get to be Mary Tyler Mooring, throwing your hat up in the air after the meeting this evening. And I hope you get to enjoy some much needed and earned downtime. Although I really still anticipate seeing Sarah at Shawnee Mission North all the time. So I don't know that part changes. But thank you so much for your service to the district and to all of our students, especially through some very rigorous experiences in which you needed a lot of perseverance and grit. So thank you again, and bon voyage.
Yes, I just thank you again. I know we had the wonderful reception for you earlier, but once again, thank you for your service, for your passion and commitment and dedication to students, to kids. And you both have left a mark here in Shawnee Mission, and I feel very grateful to have served alongside both of you. So please come back and visit us and sit through another amazing board meeting.
I have a few words about Brad and Sarah, but first I want to take a moment just because I know there are no folks here now, but earlier in the evening there were a lot of people who were coming to talk about the incident at East that happened shortly before the Thanksgiving break. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the overwhelming response the community had to that it clearly touched a nerve in our community. We had more than 100 students who have spoken out saying that they don't feel safe in their school, alumni who have shared their own stories about pervasive racist language in their school, parents who've called it unsurprising, which is the last thing you want to hear when an event like that happens. So I really applaud those folks who have used their voices to shine a light and challenge the district to do better. I was just reelected to this board less than a month ago, and I spent a lot of my time on the campaign trail talking about how important it was to continue our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in Shawnee Mission School District. And an event like this, I think, highlights that although this work is really, really central in Shawnee Mission, I don't think anyone gets to stand here and say we have it exactly right now. And the events of the last couple of weeks, I think, demonstrate that we have more work to do. So I just want to say that I'm here firm in my commitment to keep doing what I can so that all of our students can feel safe inside our schools. And hard pivot here, Brad and Sarah, you guys will be so missed. I think one of the things I've really reflected on a lot that I am imagining you guys can really feel at this point in your school board journey is so much of what we do that matters is nearly invisible. It's in the way we treat each other, it's in the questions we ask, it's in the diligence we show, it's in the way that we show up in our communities. And I always say it's never a thing you can put on a campaign postcard, but it matters a lot. So I've seen both of you do those things in ways big and small that I really, really appreciate and value, and we will very much miss you.
So I wrote down some notes, and I realized it wouldn't pass the 3-minute clock test. So I'll use a summary instead. Certainly you do some reflecting at this time when you've gone through 8+ years, and as you mentioned earlier, kind of like dog years for the pandemic. Lots of things have changed, and so as I was reflecting on all the things that had changed. I actually made some notes, and certainly this building is one of the things that changed. When Sarah and I were doing our board meetings, it was in a different room. So this is one of the big changes. But more importantly is what we've done as a district and as a board. And so I wrote down some of the areas here. Let's see if I can do some of them. We changed the way we communicate with the public about the work of the board through written summaries in the archives of the videos. We've changed how we involved our community through our board committee structures. We've changed how we elect our board and our board leadership. We've changed the process of dialogue and negotiations with our teachers association. We changed the member roles in our high school graduation ceremonies. We changed how we provide meals and how we charge for meals and how we collect for meals across the district. We changed how we select our school mascots. We changed some school boundaries. We even changed some of our school buildings, making both brand new buildings as well as remodeling some buildings as well. But we also changed how we prioritize the importance of equity, inclusion, and belonging to both students and staff across our district. As I'm sure all of us think about, we make a lot of decisions on this board, and not all of the change is probably good change, but I hope most all of the change has been good. But as I reflect on this board, I think what's really neat is the board that's going to lead us forward, because I think what you'll continue to do is examine what we're doing today and spend a lot of time saying, is this the right way to do it, or can we do it better? And sometimes that doing it better means more change. So I applaud the work of this board. I'm super excited to watch the board go forward, but I'm equally excited to pass the torch, so to speak, onto the next board and say, carry on and manage the change well. So thank you.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, Brad. You stole my words. I had the same thing written down. No, seriously, it was all great. And I did not prepare remarks, and I'm not really the best at doing this, but I've just really enjoyed my time. I've loved it, and I'm going to miss you all deeply. And I probably still will be at North for a while.
I want to close with, and I've already shared this with both of you, is that I really felt as the newbie here, before we bring on two new ones, board members, that you all were really pillars for me. I love ping-ponging in between you all, or what's Sarah going to say, or what's Brad going to say, and it really helped fortify and help me gain clarity in my role here. So I appreciate you too, even though I've had the least amount of time with you all, but I do. And pivot. And to address some of the recent events that have happened recently, I do want to make a formal statement. And as a woman and a female of color, I've always had to strategically navigate situations, whether it's as a student of color at predominantly white schools or when managing global teams in various industries, where at most times I was either the only one or the first even including my role here today as a school board member. And historically, as a nation, we know what we know. Yes, racism is unacceptable. A sense of belonging should be at the very core of accessibility to any classroom, to any room rather, a classroom, boardroom, whether it's virtually or online. And the commitment to this principle is a very real thing to all stakeholders involved, but especially to those communities who are adversely impacted. I believe that SMSD is fully aware that even before these recent events, there is more work to be done. The strategic plan is our go-to blueprint because it originates from the origins and opinions and suggestions of the people in this very community. Policy AC is yet a second tool that we will help guide us. So we know these next steps are critical for all concerned, primarily our students of color that are at each of our schools in Shawnee Mission School District, and also for those adults, the teachers, parents, the support staff, and the staff at our schools who will continue to support our students along the way. So I know the district will continue to be at the table for those hard discussions. They will continue, we will continue to encourage our students to find their voice. We saw examples of that tonight. And most, if not equally important, we as a district will continue to empower our students of color, to lead the narrative for authentic and innovative solutions for urgent issues such as this. So thank you.
That was a powerful meeting. Okay. This brings us now to executive session, and so before I seek approval to move into executive session for personnel issues, it's important to note that that this meeting will be formally concluded, and then no further business of the board will be conducted after executive session is concluded. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
5-minute break before executive session starts to factor that into.
Yes, I move that the board recess to executive session to discuss personnel issues pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under the Kansas Open Meetings Act. We will begin our open session in 5 minutes at 9:15 p.m. and we will conclude at 9:35 p.m. In the boardroom, we will reconvene. We invite Dr. Michelle Hubbard and Greg Goheen to join us.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second, Borkman?
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. Thank you all for sticking with us so late and all the work that brought us to this meeting today. All.
Thank you, Amber, for staying until the end.
Oh my gosh.
It's mostly just Amber.
Oh my gosh.